The story starts where Prince Heel, the 17th prince of the San Juarez kingdom, stood in the royal palace as his family and the high priest roared with laughter. Born with very little magic and the Cave King crest, a title with unknown effects, Heel was considered a disgrace compared to his brothers, who held prestigious crests like Sword God. As a final insult during his coming-of-age ceremony, the king exiled him to Sheol Rock, a desolate, plantless hunk of stone in the middle of the ocean where no ships ever passed. After a 10-day journey, Heel was left alone on the massive reef with only a small boat of supplies. His family didn't even bother to see him land, fully expecting him to die. Determined to survive, Heel maneuvered his boat through dangerous waves and found a small cave. Inside, he was horrified to find the skeletons of others who had been stranded there before him. While trying to find a place to bury the remains, Heel picked up an ice axe. Suddenly, a monotone voice echoed in his head. It was the Cave King crest's advice function. The voice explained that the crest provides advanced mining skills, support effects, and increased strength while inside cave. Guided by the crest, Heel saw white lights on the walls indicating the best spots to strike. With a single swing, he easily broke the rock. The crest also granted him night vision and an inventory ability, allowing him to store thousands of rocks and ores regardless of weight. As he dug deeper, his mining skill leveled up, and he began finding rare materials like iron, gold, and gems. Heel discovered two unique items: turtle stones, which extend a person's life by a day, and crystals, which increase magic power. Having been mocked his whole life for his weak magic, Heel used 90 crystals at once. When he tested a basic wind spell to clear some dust, the result was a powerful blast that roared through the cave. Realizing his potential was now limitless, Heel became obsessed with mining. As he reached 30 meters below ground, he encountered a blue slime. The crest informed him that he could tame monsters. For the first time in his life, the exiled prince felt a sense of excitement and hope. Realizing that his supposed useless crest had turned his lonely exile into a journey of incredible power. Taming monsters was generally considered a useless skill since most are hostile, but in this lonely exile, Heel welcomed the company. He named the blue slime Seal, and although it couldn't speak, its presence brought him comfort. Heel returned to mining with new energy, and after 3 days of non-stop digging, his inventory was overflowing with ores. By using hundreds of magic crystals, his power reached a level where he could easily cast intermediate spells, solving his food and water problems by catching fish with lightning and making it rain. Seal proved to be a fast learner, imitating Heel's gestures and even providing him with massages and a soft place to sleep. Heel eventually tamed 10 more slimes, though he struggled to tell them apart. Hold up! Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, "I'm loving it." I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. One morning, Seal woke Heel and pointed toward the shore, where a shipwrecked boat had drifted in. 3 green-skinned figures lay bleeding on the rocks. They were goblins, wearing tattered fur coats and looking near death. Despite the general hostility between humans and goblins, Heel couldn't leave them to die. He used a recovery spell to stabilize them, and with Seal's help, carried them into the cave. While waiting for them to wake up, Heel returned to the depths and discovered 2 rare items: pyroxene, a stone that glows forever, and a purifying stone which can break any curse. When he returned to the entrance, he found the goblins awake and arguing. The group consisted of a massive, muscular general named Ale, a small princess named Rhea, and an elderly shaman named Bari. The encounter started poorly. General Ale pointed a dagger at Heel, distrusting humans and terrified by Heel's unintentionally creepy expression, a result of his obsessive mining. To prove he wasn't hostile, Heel shared his food and demonstrated his magic, though his power only made the general more nervous. The tension broke when Princess Rhea collapsed. The shaman explained she was dying from a birth curse that shortened her life. Heel stepped in and used the purifying stone to break the curse, followed by 79 turtle stones to extend her lifespan. Rhea woke up instantly, feeling healthy for the first time. Realizing Heel had saved her, General Ale was overcome with guilt and repeatedly apologized for his behavior. As they sat down to eat, Heel introduced himself as a former prince. The goblins explained their tragic past. Their homeland had been destroyed by orcs, leaving Rhea as the sole royal survivor. After a year of being hunted by both monsters and humans on the mainland, their tribe of 800 survivors had taken to the sea in search of a new home. Their boat was just one of many that had set sail, seeking a place where they could finally live in peace. The shipwrecked goblins explained that their boat was falling apart anyway, and Princess Liena thanked Heel for saving her life. Even though the curse was gone, her remaining lifespan was only 79 days. However, Heel assured her there was no need to worry. He could find enough turtle stones in the cave to extend her life indefinitely. Overjoyed and hopeful, General Yerevan and the shaman Baris begged to help with the mining. Heel agreed but explained that to share his Cave King benefits like improved skills and efficiency, he would need to tame them first. Although they were royalty and warriors, the goblins eagerly accepted. Heel named the general Yerevan, the shaman Baris, and the princess Liena. After a quick meal, Heel prepared for their first shift. Since the goblins lacked his night vision, he crafted permanent torches by tying glowing pyroxene stones to wooden sticks. Deep in the cave, Heel demonstrated his power. With one swing, he cleared a massive section of rock that vanished instantly into his inventory. The goblins were stunned. To keep the workflow smooth, Heel instructed his slimes to pick up the rocks the goblins mined and bring them to him for automatic storage. With this system, the group spent the next 3 days mining non-stop. Life on the island began to feel like a small community. Heel built a stone kitchen for Liena, a private restroom area, and a water reservoir filled by his magic. Liena proved to be a brilliant cook, turning Heel's royal supplies into delicious meals like apple pie. However, a new problem emerged. They were running out of flour, butter, and sugar. While they had plenty of fish, they lacked wood for fire and soil to grow vegetables. Without passing ships to trade with, their diet was becoming dangerously limited. Determined to find a solution, Heel went back to mining alone while the others rested. Riding on Seal the Slime, he reached a massive hidden cavity. Unlike the rest of the cave, the walls here glowed like a sunset, and the ground was covered in soft black dirt. Suddenly, a giant black spider appeared. Though Heel was terrified, the creature didn't attack, it fled to protect its young. Sensing no malice, Heel offered to tame the spider instead of fighting it. The mother spider, now named Taryn, and her 13 children joined his team. As the spiders joined, a voice echoed in Heel's head. Because his skills had reached a high enough level, his Cave King crest upgraded to rank 2. This unlocked a workshop feature, allowing him to process and combine materials directly within his inventory. While he couldn't smelt iron yet due to his low workshop rank, the ability to craft and synthesize new items opened up a whole new world of possibilities for his growing underground kingdom. The upgrade to rank 2 unlocked a new workshop feature within Heel's inventory. He discovered he could now instantly process raw rocks into building materials like marble slabs, sand, and gravel. He could even customize their shape and size just by thinking about it, meaning he could create perfect pillars or statues without any manual labor. Additionally, a new designer cut skill allowed him to smooth out the rough, jagged walls and floors of the cave as he mined, making it easy to create flat paths and stairs. Heel headed back to the surface with Taryn, the mother spider, and her 13 children following behind. Using his new sculpting skill, he widened the steep tunnel and added steps, making the climb easy for the giant spiders. When they reached the entrance, the goblins were terrified by the sight of the massive creatures, but Heel quickly calmed them down, explaining that the spiders were now his tamed allies. The shaman Baris recognized them as cave spiders but was shocked by their size, as they are usually much smaller on the mainland. He warned Heel that these spiders are normally vicious and venomous, but their presence was actually a huge blessing. The soil found in their nest, which was actually spider waste, is incredibly fertile. Baris explained that this special soil can grow crops without sunlight and retains water perfectly, making it the ultimate fertilizer for their rocky island. Liena welcomed Taryn by offering her a grilled fish, which the spider happily accepted. Realizing they finally had a way to grow food, Heel celebrated with a small welcome party for the spiders. Over the next few days, the group worked together. Baris and Yerevan used their tribal knowledge to build a basic blast furnace. Although their blacksmithing was primitive, they managed to forge a new iron ice axe for Heel. Meanwhile, Taryn and her children helped transport the fertile spider soil to the surface to start a small farm. Liena also discovered that the spider silk was incredibly strong and soft. She used it to weave fishing nets and a smooth hand towel for Heel, even offering to make him a soft bed so he wouldn't have to sleep on a slime anymore. The next day, Heel tested a new material he found in the spider's den called sunstone. This orange rock speeds up the growth of any living thing. He planted an apple seed in the spider soil and used a few sunstone. In just seconds, the seed sprouted, grew into a full tree, and produced ripe red apple. The goblins were speechless at the sight of fresh fruit on their barren island. Heel realized that while he had a limited supply of 678 sunstone, they were the key to their survival. He decided to put Liena in charge of the farm and the sunstones, with Baris acting as her advisor. Since they were running out of royal supplies, having fresh fruit and a way to grow vegetables meant they wouldn't have to survive on just fish. With the spiders providing silk and soil and the sunstones providing instant food, the lonely rock was quickly turning into a thriving home. Heel continued his mining obsession, discovering a Dragon Ball stone that could actually resurrect the dead. Realizing how dangerous it would be to lose such an item if he died, he decided to leave it at the cave entrance for emergencies. Suddenly, Yerevan rushed over in a panic. A second ship from their tribe had arrived. Princess Liena was overcome with joy to see more survivors, including Yerevan's own child, waving their tribal flag from the distance. Thinking they would want to leave the rock now that they had a ship, Heel offered the goblins a pile of expensive gems as a parting gift to help them start a new life. However, the goblins refused to leave. They explained that they had already pledged their total loyalty to Heel and wanted to stay by his side. This touched Heel deeply. After being hated by his own royal family, he finally felt like he belonged somewhere. The happy moment was cut short when a massive wave capsized the goblins' ship. With over 200 people drowning and unable to swim, Heel realized his small boat wouldn't be enough. He used over 8,000 magic crystals at once, boosting his power to a terrifying level, and used a freeze spell to turn the ocean into a solid ice path leading to the wreck. With the help of the spiders' webs and the slimes acting as lifeboats, every single one of the 203 goblins was rescued. While treating the survivors with high-level magic, Heel noticed a strange, portly, bearded man who was completely naked. No one knew where he came from. He wasn't a goblin and hadn't been on the ship. The mysterious old man simply wandered into the kitchen, ate some fish, and began watching the workers with a smug look. When a frustrated goblin worker tried to force the old man to help make tools, the stranger took over the furnace. Moving with incredible speed, the old man forged an ice axe head that looked like a delicate work of art. Although the goblins thought it looked too thin to be useful, Heel tested it and found it was twice as effective as any tool he had ever used. The old man was a master blacksmith. Heel gave him a loincloth made of spider silk and nicknamed him Mappa. With Mappa's superior tools, the colony's productivity exploded. Heel tamed more slimes to handle the massive amount of ore being pulled from the depths. While everything seemed to be going perfectly, with Leanna's farm thriving and the island expanding, Heel noticed that the rare turtle stones were becoming harder to find. However, with a growing community and a master blacksmith on his team, the exiled prince had turned his lonely rock into a functioning kingdom. Heel noticed that the rare turtle stones were becoming harder to find, and the Cave King Crest warned of cave-in risks if he mined deeper in the usual spots. When he shared this with Leanna, her brave but sad smile made him realize he had to find a permanent solution for her lifespan. While exploring a new area, Heel discovered a hidden stone chamber made of white marble. Inside, he found false heart stones, which allowed his crest to unlock a new feature, creating and modifying automated dolls to serve as allies. Deeper in the chamber, Heel found a golden, demon-evolving stone. His crest explained that this stone could evolve a monster into a new species, resetting their body and lifespan while keeping their memory. Heel returned to the entrance to discuss this with his team. While Baris and Yerevan were content with their bodies, Leanna expressed a desire to become more useful and gain the ability to use magic, which goblins naturally lack. Heel gave her the stone, and she was instantly enveloped in a brilliant light. When the light faded, Leanna had transformed into a beautiful woman with long black hair and pale skin, looking completely human. The sight was so shocking that Mappa suffered a massive nosebleed and fainted. Although she looked human, Heel could still feel their taming bond, confirming she was still technically a monster. Leanna was moved to tears by her new form, realizing she was no longer the ugly sister of her royal family who had been bullied for her appearance and curse. She pledged her life and loyalty to Heel, who simply asked her to keep cooking him delicious meals. The next morning, Heel noticed Leanna had already begun learning magic and martial arts. However, a new concern arose. The sunstones used for farming were finite. Baris suggested a massive land reclamation project to create a larger natural farm that wouldn't rely on magic stone. Heel also wanted to create an open space for the goblin children to play. Despite Baris offering to do the work manually, Heel decided to use his Cave King powers to speed things up. He went to the shore, and using his workshop function to process raw rocks into massive blocks and sand, began dropping them into the ocean. To the stunned goblins, it looked like a mountain was growing out of thin air. Heel began outlining a massive new section of land, turning the small reef into a true island territory. Heel quickly finished outlining the new land, using his magic to blast seawater away and piling up rocks to create a massive 10,000 square meter area. To make it safe and fun for the goblin children, he used his workshop skill to build a stone plaza. As the kids ran around, Heel felt a sense of pride, realizing he was starting to look like a leader beloved by his people. The peaceful moment was cut short when a massive black bird, known as a killer bird, swooped down and snatched Mappa by his backside. The sky filled with these giant monsters, which were famous for devouring livestock and children. Heel ordered everyone to the cave, but the children were too far away. General Yerevan charged into the open with his axes to distract the birds, while Heel used fire magic to clear the sky. To protect the cave entrance, Heel used his false heart stones and a massive amount of rock to create a 3-meter-tall golem. The stone giant stood guard, blocking any birds from entering. Meanwhile, the bird that snatched Mappa gagged and vomited him out, likely because he was naked and sticky, and Seal the slime acted as a cushion for his fall. With everyone safe, Heel unleashed a massive blizzard spell, freezing the remaining birds midair. The battle ended with a massive supply of meat. Rihanna explained that killer birds taste like a mix of chicken, beef, and pork. That night, the colony celebrated with a huge barbecue. To keep the meat fresh, Heel used ice magic to create a walk-in freezer inside the cave. During the feast, Heel gave Rihanna 800 magic crystals to boost her power, wanting her to be able to defend the island with magic if he was ever away. Inspired by the fight, Yerevan's son, Fjord, begged Heel to help him get stronger. Heel agreed to let Fjord join him in the mines to search for another demon-evolving stone. As they dug, Fjord was amazed by Heel's strength, but Heel modestly admitted he was once considered useless back home. Their mining eventually led them to a massive underground hall, much larger than the previous chambers. Inside, they found rows of giant humanoid figures. Suddenly, the figures began to move. They were ancient golems. Unlike the simple doll Heel had created, these ancient versions could use magic and were equipped with armor and swords. One golem blasted flames at them, but Heel's magic shield was too strong to break. As the armored giants closed in with their swords, Heel prepared to fight back, launching a powerful storm spell to push the ancient guardians away. The ancient golems shattered against the walls as Heel's magic overpowered them. Realizing the danger of the deep tunnels, Heel signaled the slimes to halt all mining operations for the safety of the workers. While inspecting the wreckage, Fjord found a golden stone, but it was a magic stone rather than the evolution stone he sought. Heel realized these golems were artificial creations powered by these stones. Suddenly, a scream from Fjord revealed Mappa, the naked blacksmith, who had wandered into the deep chamber without a light source. Mappa was obsessed with the golem's massive silver swords and armor, which were made of mithril, a legendary metal harder and lighter than steel. Despite its reputation for being light, the 3-meter sword was too heavy for Heel or the goblins to lift. Heel used his pickaxe to break the gear down into 900 kilograms of raw mithril ingots for his inventory. Back at the surface, a competition broke out as the goblins tried to lift the one sword Mappa had carried back. Even Terran the Spider failed. General Yerevan, determined to impress his son Fjord, used his great warrior crest to successfully lift the blade, but he quickly lost his grip. The heavy hilt struck his head, knocking him unconscious. Heel healed him instantly, and the scare made Yerevan realize he needed to be more careful for his son's sake. Mappa took the mithril sword and melted it down in his furnace with incredible speed, forging a pure mithril ice axe for Heel. The tool was as light as a branch but more powerful than anything Heel had ever used. With Mappa's skills confirmed as legendary, Heel decided to use the remaining mithril and the false heart stones from the golems to create a new security force. Liena, who had been training hard in martial arts and ice magic, brought Heel a refreshing drink. Her newfound strength, demonstrated when she crushed a coconut with a bare-handed strike, inspired Heel to rethink his golem designs. Instead of giant, clunky guards, he used his workshop skill to create 14 human-sized golems. 10 were fitted with magic stones to act as specialized cave guards, capable of detecting magic and deploying shield. For the final golem, Heel experimented by using pure mithril instead of rock. The result was a mithril golem, a slender silver humanoid with a mystical glow. The statue was so beautiful and solemn that even Mappa began worshipping it in a trance. Seeing the potential of the new guards, Mappa immediately began hammering out custom mithril equipment for the golem army, further increasing the colony's defenses. Heel decided to take a break from mining, noticing how hard Fjord was working to find demon-summoning stones for evolution. As he walked back to the cave entrance with Seal the Slime, he noted that the colony was running smoothly. Mappa had even forged a beautiful mithril bell that the guard golems would ring if they sensed any danger. At the entrance, Heel found Baris, the elderly goblin shaman, and Mappa working with purple mucus from a Satan clam. Baris explained it was a rare dye used for royal clothing, though Mappa, being himself, tasted it and immediately passed out from the toxins. During their chat, Baris revealed he possessed the Magic King crest, a legendary mark that boosts magical power and allows for high-level spell creation. Despite having such a powerful crest, Baris felt it had been useless his whole life because goblins naturally lack the mana to use it. Heel, who had also been mocked for his useless Cave King crest, felt a deep connection to Baris and promised to help him find a way to use magic in the future. The peaceful atmosphere was shattered when Yerevan, the goblin general, rushed over in a panic. On the shore, the tide had washed up the body of a massive orc. The goblins, whose village had been destroyed by orcs in the past, were furious and wanted to desecrate the body for revenge. However, Rihanna stepped in with unexpected authority, stopping them and reminding everyone that they should not sink to the level of their enemies. Heel agreed, and Baris prepared to give the orc a proper burial. The situation grew more mysterious as more bodies, including those of wolf-like kobolds, began washing ashore along with ship wreckage. It was clear a major naval battle had happened nearby. While searching the debris for survivors or useful supplies, Heel and Rihanna heard a faint whimpering coming from a luxurious gold-trimmed jewelry box. The box was sealed with a magical lock, but Heel used his magic to click it open. Inside was a tiny, fluffy white puppy, a baby kobold. The little creature was terrified but quickly took a liking to Heel and Rihanna. Since the goblins and kobolds were ancient enemies, Rihanna took charge of the baby, promising to convince the tribe that the child was innocent. The next day, the baby kobold had become the center of attention. Seal made a soft bed for it, and Mappa even crafted a set of maracas to entertain the little one. Yerevan tried to play with the baby by making funny faces, but his rugged appearance only made the child cry, much to his disappointment. As the colony adjusted to its newest and cutest member, Heel remained alert, knowing that the battle at sea meant the outside world was getting closer to their hidden island. After the baby kobold rejected Yerevan and Terran's attempts to play, it only found comfort in Rihanna's arms. Heel decided to head back to the mines, leaving the surface security to the golems and Rihanna, who was getting stronger with her ice magic. Deep in the tunnels, Heel's mithril pickaxe dug through the rock until he found something unusual: world tree seeds. His magical advisor couldn't explain them since they weren't minerals, so Heel planned to ask Baris about them later. Fjord soon arrived at the mining site with the baby kobold, who immediately jumped into Heel's arm. It seemed the baby had imprinted on Heel as a parent, since he was the first person it saw upon waking. While they were talking, a mithril golem rushed down and rang a warning bell, signaling trouble on the surface. Heel hurried back up and found a damaged ship anchored near the shore. A group of 10 burly kobolds led by 2 brothers Ash, who had gray fur, and Hein, who had brown fur, were heading to the beach in small boats. Ash and Hein were elite warriors, and Hein's sharp nose had tracked the scent of their young master to the island. However, they were horrified to see the goblins on the shore, recognizing them as the Belden tribe, their sworn enemies for centuries. Fearing their prince had already been killed, the kobolds prepared for a desperate fight. Yerevan recognized the brothers as the warriors who had killed his sons in the past. Despite Rihanna and Baris trying to keep the peace, the two sides clashed. Ash and Hein were incredibly fast, but Yerevan's brute strength and Terran's spider silk and ice axes proved too much for them. Rihanna used lightning magic to paralyze the remaining kobolds, and the battle ended quickly without any deaths. When Heel arrived, he found the kobolds trapped in nets. Ash, thinking they were about to be executed, asked Yerevan to take his head. Heel stepped forward and the goblins immediately knelt in respect, which shocked the kobolds. When Heel showed them the baby kobold tucked into his shirt, Ash and the others were overcome with emotion, realizing the sole survivor of their royal family was safe. Ash explained that their kingdom had been destroyed by an orc fleet. The queen had used her last bit of magic to seal her baby in a jewelry box, hoping it would reach someone powerful enough to protect him. Since Heel had managed to break the magical seal on the box, something only a high-level magic user could do, Ash begged Heel to raise the child. He even offered their lives and their ship as payment. Heel was hesitant, knowing the deep blood feud between the goblins and kobolds. However, Rihanna and Baris stepped in, declaring that their past rivalries didn't matter anymore and that they would follow whatever Heel decided. Even Yerevan put aside his grudge, acknowledging that the island belonged to Heel. Heel officially welcomed the kobolds to the colony, stating that the rules of the outside world didn't apply here. He wanted the island to be a place where anyone in trouble could find a home. Tears in their eyes, the kobolds thanked him. However, the situation was still dire. Many more kobolds were still on the damaged ship, suffering from injuries and hunger. Heel immediately headed toward the vessel to begin emergency treatment for the survivors. Heel boarded the damaged ship and found the situation much worse than expected. Many kobolds were missing limbs or unable to move due to the cramped, filthy conditions. He also discovered the body of the kobold queen, eventually granting permission for her to be buried in a new cemetery on the island. Though Heel lacked high-level area healing magic, he and Rihanna began treating the survivors one by one. The entire colony stepped up to help. Baris and the goblins carried the wounded, Terran used silk to help them off the ship, Seal acted as a stretcher, and Mappa immediately began crafting crutches and canes for those who had lost limbs. Even Yerevan, despite his grudge, ordered his men to bring food, water, and help unload supplies. Once everyone was safe on land, Heel officially tamed the 100-plus kobold. This was a strategic move. The taming skill prevents familiars from harming their master or each other, ensuring the ancient enemies wouldn't resort to violence. Heel spent hours giving each kobold a new name to make them official members of the colony. He appointed the brothers Ashton, formerly Ash and Highness, formerly Hein, as the leaders of the kobold tribe. While the newcomers ate, Heel spoke with Baris. He felt the weight of leadership, but Baris reassured him, noting that while the goblins and kobolds had a bloody history, they both shared the pain of having their homes destroyed by orcs and being persecuted by humans. Baris promised to help the two races bond by having them work together in the mines. Heel then showed Baris the world tree seed he had found. Baris remembered legends of a massive tree that brought blessings to all life, though its destruction had caused kingdoms to fall. Intrigued, Heel decided to plant it. When he asked Rihanna for help, she briefly misunderstood his phrasing and thought he was asking to start a family, but she quickly regained her composure and agreed to help grow the tree using a sunstone. Ashton later explained their history. Their home was destroyed by the Gopher Orc tribe, and while fleeing at sea, they were hunted by the Corvus tribe, a notorious group of orc pirates. Both the goblins and kobolds had followed legends of a forgotten continent to the south, which led them to Heel's island. To accommodate the growing population, Heel spent the afternoon using his Cave King powers to expand the island. He created a massive new section of reclaimed land 10 meters above sea level to act as a safe zone. In the center of this new land, he prepared to plant the World Tree seed. Just as he was about to bury it, the eccentric Mappa appeared out of nowhere, watching with his usual silent, naked curiosity as the next phase of the island's growth began. Heel planted the World Tree seed in the center of the newly reclaimed land and prepared to use a sunstone to help it grow. However, even before he could use the stone, a small sprout appeared on its own. When Rihanna used a single sunstone to boost it, the tree didn't just grow. It exploded upward. The trunk expanded so fast that Heel and Rihanna had to run for their lives. Mappa, who was watching nearby, tripped and was swallowed by the expanding bark, getting carried high into the sky as the tree reached massive heights, far taller than any tower in the royal capital. Mappa ended up stuck in the branches, but he seemed strangely happy rather than hurt. As Heel and Rihanna looked up, a shimmering golden powder began to rain down from the tree. The powder had a sweet scent and a powerful effect. As soon as they inhaled it, they were overcome with intense joy. Rihanna, usually serious, began laughing and confessed her love for Heel. Heel, feeling the same magical high, held her hands and started dancing. Even the baby kobold joined in. The monsters in the cave soon noticed the giant tree and rushed out to see what was happening. Yerevan, Ashton, and the others were initially worried, but as soon as they reached the golden dust, they also lost their minds to the pleasure. The once hostile goblins and kobolds were now hugging, laughing, and dancing in a big circle. Baris the shaman and Fjord arrived but stayed back, realizing the dust was a hallucinogen. Baris stayed sane by covering his face and ordered the mithril golem, who don't breathe, to rescue Mappa and seal the hole in the tree where the powder was leaking from. Once the hole was plugged with spider silk and the dust settled, the effects wore off. Everyone felt embarrassed, especially Yerevan, who realized he was dancing with his former enemy. Rihanna turned bright red, remembering her confession to Heel. Peace returned and the colony began studying the world tree. Its branches were incredibly light yet stronger than iron, and its leaves had healing properties. Mappa used the wood to make new handles for everyone's mithril tools. While mining with these new tools, Fjord and Heel noticed they weren't getting tired at all, confirming the tree's wood provided a constant boost to their stamina. During the work, Heel heard a loud rip and realized his pants had torn from the intense labor. He walked back to the surface awkwardly to ask Rihanna for help. Rihanna explained that the kobolds were experts at tanning leather and were already making new clothes using killer bird hides and spider silk. She offered to make him new gear and asked him to show her the tier. In a clumsy moment, Heel dropped his pants to show the damage, only to realize his underwear had also completely shredded, leaving him exposed. Rihanna turned bright red and panicked, while Seal the slime quickly jumped in to act as a shield for Heel's modesty. Despite the embarrassment, Rihanna promised to make him a full set of high-quality leather clothes and underwear. Heel felt he had lost his dignity as a leader, but the colony was now better equipped than ever. Heel felt a bit defeated when Mappa, the eccentric old man, showed off a pair of tight, shiny leather underwear the kobolds had made for him. Realizing he was still exposed, Heel quickly grabbed a nearby cloth to cover himself and headed back into the mines to distract himself with work. While digging alongside Fjord, Heel's pickaxe broke through a rock wall and a stream of steaming hot water burst out. They had struck a natural hot spring. Fjord was thrilled, explaining that his tribe used to wash in hot springs every day, which explained why the goblins were always so clean. Heel worried that the water might flood the cave or be toxic, but Mappa immediately jumped in and started drinking the water, proving it was safe. To be sure, Heel asked Highness, the kobold hunter with an incredible sense of smell, to check it. Highness confirmed the water smelled fine, though he noted it smelled a lot better than the sweaty, hardworking Mappa. Heel wanted to transport the hot water to the surface, but didn't know how to move it upward without constant magic. He turned to Mappa for help. The old man requested a massive amount of iron, ore, and stone, which Heel provided using his Cave King powers. Mappa worked like a master craftsman, forging hollow iron pillars and strange mechanical parts. The pillars were too heavy for Heel or the other monsters to lift, so Heel used his golems to carry the heavy equipment. A few days later, Heel emerged from the mine to find iron pipes running along the cave walls. Outside, the entire colony had gathered around a T-shaped pipe Mappa had installed. With a dramatic flourish, Mappa turned a wheel and pulled a handle, causing hot water to gush out. He then adjusted the nozzle, shooting a fountain of warm water into the air that rained down on everyone. The hot water rain turned into a massive party. The water contained glowing particles that provided a healing effect and a boost of energy, similar to the World Tree's magic. Goblins and kobolds, once bitter enemies, began splashing each other and laughing together. Even the serious General Yerevan joined in, playing with the kobold children. Heel realized that this simple moment of fun was doing more to unite the two races than any speech ever could. He even joined in, using water magic to playfully blast Mappa. As the fun ended and everyone tried to dry off, Rihanna approached Heel. Her clothes were soaked and clinging to her, making Heel turn bright red and freeze in embarrassment. To hide his fluster, he quickly used wind magic to dry everyone's clothes at once. As they headed back to rest, Heel felt proud of the growing bond in the colony, though he suspected Mappa's original plan was just to get everyone to strip. Meanwhile, far out at sea, a fleet of orc pirates was in a state of pure terror. They were frantically throwing their gold, weapons, and supplies overboard, desperate to lighten their ships and escape. The orc captain, a veteran of 30 years, was shaking with fear, claiming he had never seen a monster as terrifying as the one currently hunting them near Heel's island. Back on the island, Heel decided to let Baris lead the construction of a permanent outdoor hot spring near the World Tree. While the others worked on the surface, Heel returned to the tunnels, eager to find more resources to improve their new home. Heel stayed back in the mines, determined to find something useful while the others managed their new roles. Fjord was working harder than anyone, obsessed with finding a demon-shattering stone to evolve his body and finally unlock his magic. Heel noticed Fjord's exhaustion and tried to get him to rest, but the young goblin refused to quit. Suddenly, a small explosion rocked the tunnel where Fjord was digging. Heel's quick reflexes and his golem's protection saved the boy from a hidden trap. In the debris, they discovered a small wooden chest. Heel used his magic to bypass the lock, revealing 3 golden demon-shattering stones and a mysterious clear crystal. Fjord was overcome with emotion. His relentless digging had finally paid off. When Heel analyzed the crystal, his advisor revealed it was a substitute stone, a legendary item that could transform into any other stone, even a dragon orb capable of reviving the dead. Despite its immense value, Fjord insisted Heel keep it for the good of the colony, showing how much he had grown. Their celebration was cut short when a mithril golem arrived, ringing its bell in a frantic warning. Heel rushed to the surface to find a massive Royal Navy battleship anchored offshore, but it was in terrible condition. Its white sails were stained black and it flew a sinister skull flag, marking it as a prize of the Corva's orc pirates. Oddly, the rest of the pirate fleet was missing, and the ship looked like it had been through a nightmare. A small boat approached the shore, carrying an orc leader named Camus. Despite his rough pirate reputation, Camus was dressed in a flamboyant naval uniform with heavy makeup and a golden wig. He was clearly terrified, his voice trembling as he demanded permission to land. He was shocked to see his old enemies, the goblins and kobolds, living together in peace. Yerevan and Ashton weren't interested in his demands and prepared to fight, but Heel stepped in to handle the situation. Before a full battle could break out, the rest of the orc fleet appeared on the horizon. Camus regained his confidence, thinking reinforcements had arrived, but Ashton's clairvoyance ability revealed a horrifying truth. The orcs on those ships weren't alive. They were shambling undead, and their ships were steering themselves directly into Camus's vessel, splintering it in seconds. The reason for the orcs' terror finally emerged from the depths. A massive column of water erupted as a leviathan, a mythical blue sea serpent known as the strongest creature in the world, rose from the ocean. The legendary beast, capable of destroying entire fleets with a single breath, fixed its gaze directly on Heel. Realizing that no normal weapon or magic could stop such a monster, Heel turned to Yerevan and Ashton with a look of grim determination, ordering everyone to abandon the shore and run for the safety of the caves immediately. Heel ordered Ashton and Yerevan to lead the survivors to the safety of the caves. Camus, the flamboyant orc leader, was paralyzed with fear, so Heel had his allies carry him while the golems acted as shields. Before they left, Heel handed his rare revival stones to Yerevan as a precaution, preparing to face the legendary Leviathan alone. Standing before the massive sea serpent, Heel unleashed the full power of 8,000 magic crystals. He fired a massive wave of flames that incinerated the undead orc fleet in seconds. The Leviathan dove into the sea to avoid the blast but soon lunged back out. Heel tried lightning and ice magic, but the creature's scales were immune to external spell. Even when the Leviathan retaliated with blue dragon fire, Heel's magic shield held firm. Realizing he couldn't hurt it from the outside, Heel waited for the monster to charge with its mouth wide open. Instead of magic, he used his Cave King power to instantly manifest a massive, jagged pillar of rock coated in mithril. He fired the rock spear directly into the Leviathan's throat, followed by a rapid-fire stream of more rock pillars. The sheer volume of stone expanded inside the monster's body, causing it to crash onto the island's reclaimed land with the force of an earthquake. Heel nearly fell to his death from the shockwave, but Seal the slime cushioned his landing. Rihanna rushed to him, hugging him tightly in tears, relieved he was alive. As the dust settled, they inspected the fallen beast. Mappa, the eccentric dwarf, was already busy tapping on its scales and pulling its beard to check its strength. The Leviathan was dead, providing the colony with a massive haul, transparent, glass-like scales for armor, elastic blue hide, and bones as hard as metal. The meat turned out to be a delicacy, melting in their mouths like high-end fat. With the monster gone, the group turned their attention to the surviving orc pirates. Yerevan and the others rescued 140 orcs from the wreckage. Ashton and the kobolds faced a difficult choice, as Camus's tribe had recently been their enemy. However, they decided to follow Heel's lead and break the cycle of revenge. Heel offered the orcs a place on the island, provided they worked. Camus, overwhelmed by Heel's mercy, tried to pounce on him for a thank-you kiss, but Seal blocked him, and Rihanna promptly put the orc to sleep with a spell. That night, the island celebrated. The goblins, kobolds, and spiders feasted on leviathan meat, while the orcs, still mourning their lost comrades, stuck to fruit and bird meat. The once barren rock was now a bustling community of different races working and living together. As Heel sat with Seal, watching Baris teach the children and Yerevan share a meal with Ashton, he realized he was no longer the lonely, exiled prince. He had built a true home. He then noticed the baby kobold trying to lift a heavy ice axe. Smiling, he picked up the child, realizing that even the smallest members of his new kingdom were eager to contribute to their future. As Heel sat by the fire, Rihanna brought him tea made from world tree leaves. They watched a baby kobold curiously playing with Heel's heavy ice axe. Since the child was a girl, they decided to name her Lil. Seeing the different races bonding, Heel felt a deep sense of peace, realizing the barren island had finally become a true home. The next morning, the orc leader Camus was in awe of the dwarf Mappa's skill. Mappa had crafted a stunning mithril rapier in minutes, though he hilariously rejected Camus's overly dramatic attempt at a hug. Heel eventually gathered the leaders of each race, goblins, kobolds, orcs, and the cave spider Terran for a meeting under the world tree. The main topic was what to do with the newly acquired stone, a demon-slaying stone which triggers evolution, and a replacement stone which can become any stone, including one that revives the dead. Heel was cautious about the power to bring back the dead, believing it shouldn't be a decision made lightly. Before the meeting officially started, the young orc Fjord decided to use the demon-slaying stone he had found. He wished to become strong like Heel. In a flash of light, Fjord evolved into a human-like form with pale skin and short dark hair, looking remarkably like Heel. While everyone was shocked, Heel was just relieved Fjord was safe, though he quickly told the now human youth to go put some clothes on. With Fjord's successful evolution as proof of the stone's power, the meeting began. Heel asked who should use the remaining demon-slaying stone. Camus immediately volunteered, but the others felt the choice should benefit the whole island. Ashton suggested that Baris, the wise elder, should be the one to evolve. Although Baris was humble, everyone agreed his strategic mind and leadership were vital. Baris eventually accepted, planning to wish for a longer lifespan, the ability to use magic, and the power of flight to better protect and scout for the island. Finally, they discussed the second stone. Camus, eager to prove his worth, explained that he was the best sailor among them, having spent 35 of his 40 years at sea. He argued that his evolution could be the key to the island's future seafaring and trade. Even the tough warrior Yerevan couldn't deny Camus's expertise, as the orc had previously commanded a massive fleet. The leaders began to consider how Camus's specialized skills could turn the island into a true naval power. Camus explained that while the island was a good home, they were still lacking variety in crops and, more importantly, advanced knowledge and magic. He pointed out the gold and mithril lying around and suggested they start trading with other countries. To make this possible, Camus wanted to evolve so he could handle the dangers of the sea alone. He wished for the power to use wind magic to fill sails and the ability to fly to scout for storms and land. Everyone agreed that his seafaring expertise was irreplaceable, so Heel handed over the last two stones. Camus used his stone first. In a burst of light, the massive orc transformed into a slender, beautiful woman with long brown hair and pure white wings. However, the transformation wasn't total. Camus still possessed a male symbol below the waist, which caused a bit of a shock for Heel. Despite the confusing mix of features, Camus was thrilled with his new angelic look and immediately started blowing kisses. Next, the elder Baris used his stone. He transformed into a tall, muscular figure with gray skin, sheep-like horns, and black bat-like wings. He looked like a powerful demon from a myth, and his voice was now clear and strong. Both Baris and the young orc Fjord, who had evolved earlier, could now sense a massive surge of magical power within themselves. With the evolutions complete, the group discussed the final replacement stone. Baris suggested using it to revive the Kobold Queen, which would give the baby Kobold Lil her mother back and provide the island with a powerful sorceress. However, the Kobold leaders, Ashton and Highness, selflessly suggested saving the stone. They argued that it was too valuable to use now and should be kept as a safety net in case something happened to Heel, or if they found an even better use for it later. Heel agreed and tucked the rare stone safely into his pocket. To keep the island running smoothly, Heel officially assigned roles. Baris became the prime minister in charge of politics and law. Rihanna took over agriculture and daily life. Yerevan was named Minister of Defense, and Camus became the Navy chief and self-appointed Minister of Fashion. Mappa remained the head of blacksmithing, training others to craft high-quality tools. Finally, Heel jokingly named himself the Minister of Caves so he could focus on his true passion, mining. As Heel returned to the deep tunnels with Seal the Slime, he realized that traveling back and forth was becoming a chore, taking 15 minutes just to reach the surface. He began thinking about building a transportation system, perhaps using crystals or carts. While he was lost in thought, Fuhr arrived with the baby kobold Lil. The little one had already learned to stand and was carrying a tiny, high-quality ice axe Mappa had made for her. Seeing the child's enthusiasm for digging, Heel decided to officially tame her, granting her the blessings of the Cave King. As soon as the bond was formed, Lil and Fuhr were amazed to see the cave light up with the magical guidance of the skill. At that moment, a voice echoed in Heel's mind, announcing that his Cave King title had officially upgraded to rank 3. The upgrade to rank 3 of the Cave King title instantly improved the mining light, making it visible even outside the cave. It also granted night vision to all tamed monsters, turning the dark tunnels as bright as day for Lil and Fuhr. Fuhr, eager to impress and get on Heel's good side, began mining enthusiastically alongside the young kobold Lil. The next morning, while supervising Lil's impressive digging progress, Heel struck a massive, artificial golden wall. Behind it lay a hidden, perfectly clean room filled with glowing pyroxenes and golden shelves. The space looked like a high-tech alchemy lab or winery, featuring strange pipes, glass vats filled with purple liquid, and golden barrels. Heel also found several broken fake heart stones, suggesting the room was once maintained by Golem. As the other leaders arrived, Camus was immediately drawn to the smell of top-quality wine. However, the discovery took a turn when Rihanna screamed. They found the dwarf Mappa floating naked inside a large glass vat filled with purple liquid. After a moment of panic, they realized Mappa wasn't drowning. He had figured out how to use the machinery to go for a swim and was happily gulping down the wine. While the orcs and goblins began a wine-tasting session, Heel wondered how such a clean, functional room could exist without any visible doors or exits. Rihanna then discovered a strange, pale blue hexagonal stone. Heel's Cave King ability identified it as a teleportation stone, which allows instant travel between 2 points. Heel realized this explained the lack of doors. Anyone using this room likely teleported in and out. While the prospect of instant travel could solve the island's transportation issues, Heel remained cautious. He knew that if more stones were nearby, they might lead to unexplored and potentially dangerous areas of the underground ruin. Barris decided to stay behind in the hidden wine cellar to study the machinery. He figured out that by placing grapes into the glass vats, the device could automatically extract the liquid to produce high-quality wine. While Heel was too young to drink, the news of a potential vineyard thrilled the rest of the leaders. However, the discovery was cut short when a strange shadow was spotted approaching the island from the seabed. The next day, Heel focused on mining and struck a massive vein of diamond. He pulled out 80 raw gemstones, each larger than the ones found on the king's scepter back home. While the island now had immense wealth in rubies, sapphires, and diamonds, they still lacked a jeweler to process them and a proper ship to trade them with the mainland. Camus was working on upgrading the kobold's old boat, but it wasn't ready for deep-sea travel yet. As the mines went deeper, the walk back to the surface began taking over 20 minutes. Heel worried that soon it would take an hour just to get home for dinner. Just as he was wishing for a better way to travel, he found Mappa standing next to a bizarre new invention, a set of iron boxes on wheels sitting on parallel metal tracks. Despite Mappa being completely naked as usual, his engineering was brilliant. He had built a steam-powered mine train. Heel, Fuhr, and the baby kobold Lil hopped into the passenger car. The lead engine began spewing smoke and took off at incredible speeds. It moved faster than a galloping horse, whipping around corners and climbing steep slopes. What used to be a 20-minute trek was cut down to less than 60 seconds. The excitement of the new train was interrupted when a mithril golem arrived, ringing a bell to signal an emergency on the surface. As Heel reached the shore, he felt a massive surge of magical energy coming from the ocean, not from a single beast like the Leviathan, but from thousands of smaller ones. The waves had turned blood red. The red wave was actually a massive swarm of scissor crab. These monsters were famous for raiding coastal villages, using their iron-like shells to deflect physical attacks and firing lightning magic to paralyze their prey. If they landed, they would destroy the island's new farms. Heel rushed to the front lines where Rihanna, Barris, and Camus were already prepared. Since the crabs were weak to magic, the group unleashed a barrage of fire spells. Heel acted as a battery, funneling his massive mana reserves into his friends to boost their power. Meanwhile, the archers used Mappa's custom-made crossbows to pierce the crab's thick shell. The combined defense was a total success, wiping out the swarm before they could cause any damage. The survivors cheered, realizing they had just secured a massive new food source. Scissor crab meat was a luxury delicacy, and their claws could be turned into high-grade tools. Heel spent the rest of the night using his magic to expand a massive walk-in freezer deep in the caves to store the catch. Exhausted and shivering from the freezing spells he used to chill the room, Heel headed back toward the surface. Mappa picked him up in the new train, which was now being operated by goblins whom Mappa had trained. As they sped toward the village, Heel looked forward to a warm fire and a celebratory feast of crab meat, realizing that even though the island faced constant threats, his people were becoming stronger and more prepared every day. After a long night, Rihanna and Barris used their new ice magic to finish processing the massive scissor crab haul. The island was buzzing with the delicious smell of seafood, making everyone's stomach growl. Rihanna prepared a special crab hot pot using the luxury meat and world tree leaves, creating a soup so good it put any royal feast to shame. Heel was so exhausted and cold from his magic use that his hands were shaking, making it hard to even hold a spoon. Seeing this, Rihanna gently fed him the soup herself. The warmth of the meal and Rihanna's kindness made Heel's fatigue vanish instantly. Nearby, the other leaders like Ashton and Camus were already passed out, having celebrated a bit too much with the newly discovered wine. The next day, the group put Mappa's new steam train to work. What used to be a long, tiring walk into the deep mines now took only a few minutes. With the extra time and energy, the mining team, including the young orc Fjord and the baby kobold Lil, went even deeper. Lil, using her sharp monster instincts, sniffed out a hidden spot behind a rock face. When Heel dug through, he found a pile of ancient bird skeletons and a strange, perfectly smooth white egg. Unlike a normal fossil, this egg was beautiful and sparkled like a gemstone. Heel tucked the mysterious prize into his pocket, curious about what kind of creature it belonged to. Later, Camus called Heel to the shore to show off the island's first real ship. He had remodeled the old kobold boat into a magnificent three-masted sailing vessel. However, there was a problem. The orcs were terrified of the open sea. Even though the Leviathan was dead, the trauma of seeing their fleet destroyed made them tremble whenever they sailed too far from land. Heel didn't want to force them into trade missions if they were scared, but he realized they needed a ship that felt invincible. He suggested covering the hull in mithril plates, a material light enough to float but strong enough to tank a monster's attack. While Camus was skeptical about the logistics, the naked genius Mappa gave a thumbs up, signaling he already had a plan to make it work. Before starting the next big project, Mappa and the others led Heel to a new surprise near the World Tree, a set of outdoor hot springs. The baths offered a stunning view of the ocean and the glowing tree. Rihanna was eager to help Heel wash up, but a flustered Heel politely declined, insisting he could handle his own bath. Despite the constant work and threats, the island was finally starting to feel like a place where everyone could actually relax and enjoy their new life. While the hot spring was a welcome surprise, it led to a bit of an awkward situation. Since the island's residents were mostly monsters, they didn't care about being naked, but Heel was still a human and a former prince. He felt shy about bathing in front of everyone, especially Rihanna. When Barris offered to wash his back, a common custom for nobles, Heel politely explained that humans prefer privacy. Rihanna and Barris were touched by his honesty and promised to build him a private bathhouse. While they went to start construction, Heel noticed Mappa already floating in the water, looking incredibly relaxed. Nearby, the baby kobold Lil was imitating him, floating on her back while carefully holding the mysterious white egg she had found in the mines. Heel thought he saw the egg twitch, but he brushed it off, thinking it was just his imagination. Later, while Heel was eating lunch, Lil joined him, still clutching her treasure. She had grown remarkably fast for a baby, already able to eat on her own and follow mining instructions. While they ate, Heel watched Mappa and Camus discussing the new ship. Camus wanted to cover the hull in mithril for protection, but Mappa was struggling with the design. Since mithril is hard to melt in large amounts, they couldn't make a single plate big enough to wrap the ship. Heel stepped in to help. Using his fire magic, he acted as a high-powered furnace, melting massive chunks of mithril instantly. Mappa worked with incredible speed, hammering the molten metal into a single giant sheet that perfectly fit the ship's hull. The orcs were amazed. With a mithril-coated ship, they no longer had to fear sea monsters. In the middle of the celebration, Camus noticed something on Heel's shoulder. It was a small, pure white bird with ruby-red eyes. At first, they thought it was a seagull, but the Kobold brothers, Ashton and Highness, identified it as a rare white dove. As they debated whether it was a stray or a potential food source, Heel noticed white eggshells on the ground. The bird hadn't flown to the island. It had hatched from the ancient egg Lil was holding. Suddenly, a notification echoed in Heel's mind. The bird was a monster and could be tamed. Even more surprising, the tiny dove possessed more magical energy than any of the orcs. Heel officially tamed the creature and named her Mel. Lil and Mel immediately bonded, treating each other like siblings. That evening, Heel tried to feed Mel some grilled fish, but the little bird wasn't interested. Rihanna stepped in, realizing that doves usually eat grains, and offered her some warm soup instead. After Rihanna carefully cooled it down, Mel happily gulped it up. As Heel watched Rihanna care for the new arrival and Lil finish the leftover fish, he felt a deep sense of warmth. His family on the island was growing, and even the smallest additions were proving to be special. As Heel watched Mel the dove, he realized she was no ordinary bird. Despite being a newborn, she had a massive appetite, even crunching through fish bones that should have been dangerous. Barris, now in his powerful demon-like form, suggested that since the egg was found deep underground, it likely belonged to a rare, ancient species. Regardless of her origins, Heel and Rihanna officially welcomed Mel as a member of the island family. Over the next few days, Mel and the baby kobold Lil became inseparable. Mel grew surprisingly round, looking more like a white ball than a bird, and she constantly followed Lil around. Eventually, Mel grew restless in the dark caves and began pulling at Lil's arm, gesturing toward the surface. Realizing the babies needed fresh air, Heel decided to take a break from mining to give them a tour of the island. The trio boarded the steam train, and Heel marveled at how much the underground colony had grown. The tunnels now resembled a bustling subterranean city, complete with a massive freezer for monster meat, a wine cellar, and residential areas for the various tribes. Mappa had even installed a ventilation system using metal pipes to circulate fresh sea air throughout the caves, removing the smell of dust and sweat. Reaching the surface, Heel found the island more vibrant than ever. The reclaimed land had been expanded and a magnificent stone watchtower now stood at the edge of the territory. However, as they approached the tower, Heel saw something terrifying. Children from all the tribes were floating in midair, spinning around the top of the structure. Heel panicked, thinking it was some kind of harsh punishment, but General Yerevan explained it was actually a giant swing made by Mappa and Terran the spider. Using unbreakable spider silk and a rotating metal frame, they had created a massive amusement park ride. Despite Heel's secret fear of heights, a trauma from his childhood, Yerevan playfully dragged him onto the ride. While the children, Lil and Mel, had the time of their lives, Heel barely managed to keep his lunch down, realizing his fear of heights was only getting worse. After wobbling off the tower, Heel headed toward the shore to inspect the new harbor. Barris and Camus had overseen the construction of 5 large stone piers to protect the ships from waves. The area had become a popular social hub where goblins, orcs, kobolds, and even slimes gathered to fish. Heel ran into Fjör, who was showing off a bucket full of large fish. Fjör explained that the waters around the piers were teeming with life, and the fish were biting almost instantly. Seeing his people, once enemies, laughing and competing over who could catch the biggest fish, Heel felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The Lonely Rock was no longer just a survival camp. It had officially become a thriving, joyful kingdom. Beyond the pier, the sea was filled with massive fish in unusual colors. Lil and Mel's eyes sparkled at the sight, already recognizing them as food. At the very edge of the dock, Barris and Terran were busy fishing. Terran, the cave spider, was impressively handling 6 rods at once. When Heel called out, Barris was so focused he didn't even notice until the kids patted him on the back. Heel decided to join them, wanting to experience fishing as recreation rather than just using magic to blast the water. Terran challenged him to a competition to see who could catch the biggest prize. Almost immediately, something hit Heel's line with incredible force. He was nearly pulled into the ocean before Terran grabbed him. Together, they hauled in a heavy, rock-like object. It was a Satan shell, a massive, ominous shellfish that immediately spat out a corrosive purple liquid. Barris stepped in and used an electric shock spell to neutralize the creature. As the monster died, its grotesque insides spilled out, making Heel feel nauseous again. Barris explained that while he had the Magic King crest, he was still learning to control his massive power, which was why his spell was so destructive. These shells are normally small and used to make expensive purple dye for royalty, but this one was unnaturally huge. Heel looked toward the world tree and realized its presence was making everything on the island grow faster and larger, including the sea life. While the giant shells meant more dye and profit, their venom was also stronger. Mappa had once collapsed just from licking a small one, so this giant version was a serious hazard. Terran didn't seem to mind. He began wrapping the shell's contents in silk to squeeze out the valuable mucus. Barris even suggested roasting the meat, but the sight was too much for Heel's stomach, and he quickly headed back toward the world tree to recover. The air near the tree felt like a lush forest. The orchards had grown into a massive operation, producing crops like potatoes and turnips at high speed. Nearby, a bathhouse had been built to utilize the underground hot springs, including a private section for Heel. As he explored, he found a new boardwalk spiraling up the trunk of the world tree. Heel, Lil, and Mel began the climb. Near the base, they saw masks made of white cloth. Barris had warned that the tree leaked a golden powder that could make people feel lightheaded, so Heel used a magic shield to avoid breathing it in. The walkway was high and swaying, held up by strong spider silk ropes. Along the way, they met the Kobold brothers, Ashton and Highness, who were on guard duty. They teased that Rihanna was waiting at the top with a surprise. Seal the Slime helped a tired heel finish the climb. At the top, where the branches split, the environment looked like a floating forest in the clouds. Flowers and grass grew everywhere, and birds rested among the golden mist. Number 15 guided them to a clearing where Rihanna had planted a stunning flower field near a waterfall of tree sap. Rihanna excitedly suggested building a royal mansion for Heel there, arguing that as their king, he shouldn't live in a simple stone room. Heel politely declined, preferring to stay close to everyone else. The peaceful atmosphere and the long climb finally caught up with Lil and Mel, who fell asleep in Heel's arm. Rihanna then unpacked a meal of fish steamed in world tree leaves and fresh lemon drinks, and the group settled down to eat in the high-altitude paradise. After finishing a peaceful lunch in the treetops with Rihanna, Heel returned to the pier to handle the massive pile of treasure he had pulled from his inventory. Gold, silver, and rare gems like rubies and diamonds were stacked higher than a person. The island's residents, including Yerevan and Barris, were stunned by the sheer scale of the wealth. Even the monster children, Lil and Mel, started playing in the pile of jewels. Heel didn't mind, telling the adults to let them have fun since they had worked so hard to dig it all up. Rihanna joked about wanting to jump into the pile herself, while Heel realized he now had enough wealth to buy almost anything in the royal capital. Camus, the former orc captain who now looked like a beautiful human woman, prepared to set sail for the orc port to trade. Heel gave Camus a shopping list: seeds for new crops, livestock for milk and wool, and as many books as possible on technology, cooking, and magic to help the island grow. He also instructed Camus to use the treasure to pay the ransoms of any kobold or goblin prisoners and bring them back to the island if they had nowhere else to go. Barris suggested buying extra ships if any were available. Camus, confident in his new wind magic and the ship's reinforced mithril hull, promised to return within 2 weeks. After a flashy farewell, the ship disappeared into the horizon. The next morning, Heel went back to his daily routine of digging in the deepest part of the cave with Lil and Mel. As they worked, the ground suddenly began to shake violently. Heel worried it was a massive earthquake and put up a magic shield to protect the kids. When the shaking stopped, Lil pointed to a strange, fleshy, flower-like object sticking out of the cave wall. When Lil hit the wall with a pickaxe, the flower opened up like a giant mouth and let out a deafening roar, spraying water everywhere. To Heel's shock, a large, glowing red eye appeared in the opening. A deep, booming voice spoke, and a massive, lizard-like creature with scales and claws emerged. The creature, a giant earth dragon named Loidon, was just as surprised to see a human. He explained that he had been digging through the earth for a month from the other side of the planet and got stuck when he hit the magically reinforced walls of Heel's cave. Loidon introduced himself as a traveling merchant. Since he came from a completely different continent called Elt, he hoped to trade rare items that couldn't be found in this part of the world. Seeing an opportunity to make a new friend and business partner, Heel invited him to the surface for a meal. Under the world tree, Loidon showed off a massive appetite, devouring whole roasted birds and eating crabs, shells, and all, while drinking entire barrels of wine. Barris and Heel watched in awe, noting that earth dragons were legendary creatures never mentioned in any local books. Loidon was thrilled with the fresh food and the island's hospitality, marking the beginning of the island's first official trade relationship with the underground world. Loidon, the earth dragon merchant, got quite tipsy on wine and admitted his kind had never tasted alcohol before. To keep things professional, Heel shifted the focus to trade. Loidon pulled out giant jars, glass-like weapons, and art pieces made from fire and green dragon scale. These materials were incredibly hard and heat-resistant, catching the eye of Mappa, the island's master craftsman. Loidon also offered 30 wyvern eggs and 1 rare fire dragon egg, explaining they could be eaten or hatched if kept warm. Barris suggested raising them, as wyverns could provide the island with much-needed aerial transport and surveillance. Since Loidon's home continent was a volcanic wasteland short on wood, Heel traded world tree branches and fruit for the eggs. Loidon mentioned that dragons bond with the first person they see, making them easy to tame. After the deal, the merchant headed back through his tunnel, promising to return with more goods. The next day, Heel set up a specialized hatching room under the world tree, lined with soft feathers and a fireplace. Eager to see what else lay hidden underground, he organized a mining competition with Fjord and Terran in the deepest part of the cave. While digging, Heel's ice axe hit a solid man-made wall. Fjord and Terran found the same barrier in their sections, suggesting a massive structure was buried there. After Barris sent guards to secure the area, Fjord broke through the wall. Instead of a dark cave, they discovered a breathtaking underground garden filled with lush grass, glowing flowers, and rectangular crystals. The entire area was encased in a glass-like dome that let in sunlight from above, despite being deep underwater. Terran seemed to recognize the place, acting with unusual respect. Heel realized the crystals were actually tombstones, making this a sacred cemetery for an ancient civilization. Suddenly, a group of golems appeared. Unlike previous encounters, these stayed back, acting as silent sentinels. Seal the slime moved toward a particularly large tombstone, and a blinding light revealed a beautiful blonde woman in a royal blue dress. She introduced herself as Sierra, the former emperor of the Verua Empire. She explained that she was Seal's soul-given form. Long ago, her people had merged their spirits with slimes to survive a global ice age. Sierra revealed that her empire had once ruled the world, but was forced underground during the endless winter. Their civilization was eventually devastated by a massive meteorite, which buried their mountain stronghold and trapped them in the dark for 10,000 years. Heel's mining had finally brought light back to her people. She showed Heel a magical 3D map of the old imperial city, pointing to a deep sector where the majority of her people remained in cryogenic sleep. Sierra begged Heel to continue digging to reach the city's control center, which held the technology to thaw their bodies and reactivate the golem. Heel, whose passion was already mining, readily agreed to help free her people from their eternal slumber. Sierra explains that the golems in the city will continue to attack unless the central control device is deactivated. Since the stairs have collapsed, Heel decides the safest way to reach the device is to dig a spiral path downward. He meets with his advisors under the World Tree to plan the mission. While the former goblin warriors focus on how to fight the golems, Heel shifts the focus to safety, explaining that they should avoid deep facilities for now and use a structured mining approach. Heel, Fuhr, and Terran will lead the dig, while Mappa and the slimes follow behind to install a railway, ventilation, and water pipes. Before the mission begins, Heel relaxes in the hot springs. He feels a bit awkward having Seal the slime wash him, knowing now that she contains the soul of the beautiful Empress Sierra. Suddenly, alarm bells ring across the island. A ship has been spotted. It isn't Camus returning. The ship carries the flag of the Principality of Barlian. Heel explains to Barris and Erevan that the Principality was once a great empire, but is now a weak vassal state of the Sandfair's kingdom. Barris suggests sinking the ship to keep the island's growth a secret from Heel's father, the king. However, Heel refuses to start an unnecessary war or kill innocent people. He decides to let the ship go, even if it means his father might eventually find out about the island and send an army. The Principality ship eventually sails away, leaving the island's future uncertain. The next day, the mining operation begins. Heel, Fuhr, and Terran work in perfect coordination to dig the spiral tunnel, while Mappa builds the railway behind them. Number 15, the Mithril Golem, stands guard with a massive shield to protect the group from any hostile golems. Despite the excitement of discovering ancient artifacts, Heel remains worried about his father's eventual reaction, but Fuhr encourages him to focus on the task at hand. Together, they push deeper into the earth toward the heart of the ancient imperial city. Heel discussed his father, the king, with Fuhr. He explained that while the king is a strict and ruthless man who acts only for the benefit of the kingdom, he is also a cunning strategist. Heel realized that since his territory was granted by a divine oracle, the king likely wouldn't launch a direct military attack immediately. Instead, he would send spies first. Heel decided the best defense was to make the island look like an impregnable fortress, perhaps by building massive towers or creating even larger golems to deter any invasion. As they continued mining, Heel's group broke through a wall into a massive, pitch-black void. Suddenly, hundreds of red lights appeared, floating spherical black rocks that acted as sentinels. When Heel tried to attack with fire and ice magic, the rocks simply absorbed the energy. The red lights turned blue and yellow as the golems fired the magic back at them in the form of powerful beams. Realizing magic was useless, Seal the Slime signaled Heel to use his ice axe instead. Heel, Fuhr, Terran, and Mappa charged the floating rocks. While the golems could absorb spells, they couldn't withstand physical hits. Heel and Terran smashed through them like they were mining ordinary ore. Terran was especially impressive, using his 4 arms and incredible agility to take down dozens of golems at once. Even Mappa joined in, smashing rocks with his hammer while greedily searching the debris for rare material. Just as they cleared the room, the ceiling opened to reveal a boss golem 10 times larger than the others. Terran tried to strike it, but his mithril axes couldn't even scratch the surface. The giant rock let out a massive blast of holy energy that nearly blew everyone away. Heel realized they couldn't win with a head-on attack. He hopped onto Terran's back, and the spider sprinted across the walls and ceiling at high speed, dodging the boss's lethal light beam. Once the golem stopped to recharge, Heel leapt from Terran's back and drove his ice axe directly into the creature's glowing central eye, shattering it instantly. With the boss defeated, Heel's Cave King crest upgraded to rank 4. This upgrade expanded his automatic mining range and allowed him to collect resources even outside of cave. He also unlocked a new workshop function, giving him the ability to instantly craft ingots and glass into any shape or size he desired. After the battle, the group inspected the loot. They found false heart stones, used for making golems, and magic stones that stored energy. Heal also identified the black material from the golems as magic defense stone, a rare substance that provides resistance to magic. According to his appraisal, the stone is even edible and can grant permanent magic resistance to anyone who eats it. Mappa immediately began gathering the shards, already planning how to use these new materials to upgrade the island's defenses. Fior examined the black shards and confirmed they were indeed edible. Though the texture was like biting into hard crystal, they decided to wash and crush the stones before eating them to gain permanent magic resistance. Along with these magic defense stones, Heal identified black iron, a metal even harder and more heat-resistant than regular iron, and magic absorption crystals, which had allowed the golems to soak up Heal's spell. Back at the World Tree, Heal met with his advisors to discuss how to use this massive haul. He suggested everyone eat the crushed defense stones, but after taking a bitter first bite himself, Rihanna promised to find a way to cook them into something more edible. Heal then focused on building a new generation of golem. He planned to create small, magic-resistant guards to protect the miners and underwater golems to secure the coast from dangerous sea creatures like Satan shells. The conversation shifted to the island's defense. Yerevan suggested building a golem taller than the World Tree to intimidate any potential invaders, like the king's spies. While Rihanna and Barris worried about the weight of such a giant on the reclaimed land, Heal liked the idea of a massive psychological deterrent. He decided to place the giant golem in the sea to avoid any stability issues on land. First, Heal crafted number 16, a human-sized submersible golem shaped like a fish that could move rapidly underwater and walk on land. Next, he prepared to create the 60-meter-tall giant. He agreed to model the body after Yerevan's impressive muscles, but planned to give it a generic temple-like face to avoid the embarrassment of a self-portrait. As Heal concentrated his magic to build the statue, Mappa suddenly jumped in front of Yerevan to pose. The result was a disaster. A colossal naked stone statue with its eyes rolled back, mouth hanging open, and hands making peace signs. Yerevan was devastated, but the island's children loved the ridiculous statue. The Mappa golem even started striking strange poses and blowing kisses, becoming a popular new landmark. Heal decided to leave it as it was, though he added a giant axe to its hand and gems for eyes that could double as a lighthouse. Returning to the deep mining site, Heal explored the massive empty hall where he had fought the floating golem. Seal the Slime revealed that the room was actually a high-tech training facility. By touching a hidden control stone, Seal could manipulate gravity to make bodies feel heavy or simulate extreme, weather like blizzards and torrential rain. Heal realized the ancient empire used this room and the magic-absorbing golems to train their warriors in the harshest conditions possible. Seal demonstrated that the training room could simulate various environments, including rain. Heal realized the space was perfect for the colony to exercise and master magic without risking damage to the island. During a test, the room even projected realistic hallucinations of Rihanna, which briefly panicked Heal before he understood it was a training feature to build mental resistance. He designated the area as the Sheol Training Ground, where Yerevan and the other warriors immediately began intense drills. 3 days later, while Heal was mining deep underground, a massive explosion rocked the island. He rushed to the surface to find the sky had turned pitch black. It wasn't a storm or a cloud of birds, but a terrifying swarm of devil hoppers, carnivorous human head-sized grasshoppers that spit corrosive mucus. Usually solitary forest creatures, these monsters were now moving in a massive, unnatural swarm that threatened to devour the World Tree and every green thing on the island. The giant Mappa golem began breathing fire into the sky, but the swarm was so dense that the holes in their formation filled up instantly. Heal unleashed a massive fire spell that lit up the entire sky, yet even this only killed a fraction of the pests. Realizing brute force wasn't enough, Rihanna suggested a tactical combination. She and Heal would douse the swarm with water magic so Barris could strike them with lightning, using the water to conduct the electricity through the entire flock. As they struggled to produce enough water, the sky suddenly broke into a localized torrential downpour. Taking advantage of the sudden rain, Barris and Rihanna unleashed powerful lightning spells, causing the devil hoppers to fall into the sea like a collapsing wall. The island was saved, though Heal suspected the miraculous rain might have actually been triggered by Rihanna's latent magical potential. While the goblins and kobolds celebrated the arrival of a new food source, roasting the giant insects like a delicacy, Heal grew concerned. Between the Leviathan, the scissor crabs, and now the devil hoppers, it seemed the island's rich nature was attracting increasingly dangerous threats. He realized that while his defenses were strong, he needed better strategic planning to protect their home from the escalating dangers of the natural world. Exhausted but determined, he returned to the mines, knowing he had to keep digging to unlock the ancient city's secrets and further strengthen the island. Heel was heading back to the mines when he noticed an unfamiliar tunnel. He followed the sound of digging and found Lil the kobold and Mel the baby bird monster working away with small mithril ice axes. A shield-bearing golem was watching over them to ensure their safety. Although Heel had restricted digging in deep areas, the two were so focused and eager to show him something that he couldn't stay mad. Lil, who had a knack for finding ancient remains, pointed insistently at a rock wall. Heel decided to trust Lil's instincts. Seal the slime also gave a supportive nod, sensing something ahead. Heel struck the wall with his ice axe, and as the rocks crumbled, a massive circular space was revealed. It was a giant underground library with walls covered in countless books. The room featured a terrifyingly deep open atrium that stretched both up and down into the darkness. While exploring, Mappa suddenly appeared, having sniffed out the new discovery. He rushed to a shelf, opened a book, and immediately collapsed with a massive nosebleed. Heel checked the book and found it contained incredibly realistic, suggestive images that were definitely not for kids. He quickly shut it and warned Seal to make sure Baris kept children away from that specific section. Rihanna soon arrived, having heard about the unauthorized digging. She suggested that Lil and Mel might have crests or special abilities that helped them find this place. Lil and Mel then brought a specific book to Heel. Through Seal's help, Heel realized it was a spellbook for transformation magic. The two monsters wanted to learn how to take human forms while still being able to switch back to their original bodies. However, the books were written in ancient, undecipherable scripts. Seal pointed further down toward the island's central control unit, implying that a translation tool might be located there. Back on the surface, Heel shared the news with Baris over lunch. Baris was thrilled. He had experience deciphering foreign languages and was confident he could eventually understand the library's content. Heel officially put Baris in charge of the library, tasking him with guarding the dangerous heights and translating the ancient knowledge. With the library handled, Baris shifted the conversation to the island's future. He presented a map for urban planning, noting that since they had moved the fields and hot springs to the World Tree, there was plenty of open space. They discussed building a school and specialized workshops for cooking and blacksmithing. However, they realized that since everyone on the island currently shares all resources, a traditional shop or money-based economy wasn't necessary yet. For now, the focus remained on reaching the control unit to unlock the island's full potential. Heel and Baris discussed the idea of opening shops on the island, but since the residents shared everything for free, they realized a local economy wasn't needed. However, Baris suggested a trading post for outsiders, like the underground merchant who had visited before. Heel liked the idea but worried that trading with most nations would reveal his location to the king of San Juarez, who had banished him. While they could safely trade with the orcs through Camus, finding other neutral partners was rare. Suddenly, a warning bell rang from the World Tree. 3 large, older-style ships, a convoy, were approaching the island. They flew a yellow flag with a black dragon, a symbol Heel didn't recognize. Unlike pirates, they moved in an orderly military formation. Heel met Ashton and Yerevan at the pier to assess the situation. Ashton noted that the ships were carrying armored soldiers, and Yerevan was ready for a fight. As they watched, a small boat detached from the fleet and headed for the pier. Through a telescope, Heel saw a young boy with blue hair and glasses waving a white flag. He was accompanied by a captain with strange, dragon-like ears and several soldiers. The rowers appeared to be slaves of various races, covered in scars. When the boat docked, the captain, named Ardor, spoke arrogantly in an unknown language. The boy, Belfault, translated, introducing Ardor as a high-ranking knight of the Vader Dragon Kingdom. Yerevan didn't care for the titles and snapped at them, causing the terrified Belfault to bow repeatedly. Ardor looked at Heel with contempt, likely because Heel looked like a simple miner rather than a powerful lord. Belfault explained that their fleet had been mapping the coast when the San Juarez Navy attacked them, sinking 5 of their ships. They were low on food and water and had many wounded soldiers who needed treatment. Despite Yerevan's suspicions, Heel agreed to help, offering healing magic and supplies on the condition that they remained unarmed. However, Ardor was secretly plotting a betrayal. He was mesmerized by the gold, jewels, and the massive statues on the island. Having lost 5 of the king's ships, he knew he would be punished upon his return unless he brought back immense wealth. Seeing Heel as a weak leader with only a few monsters, Ardor decided he would occupy the island and steal everything. While the wounded were being treated by Rihanna and the others, Yerevan warned Heel that Ardor was sizing them up like a predator. Heel admitted he was also concerned. If he let them leave, they would return with a full army to invade. If he killed them, he would be choosing a path of bloodshed. Later, Heel spoke privately with Belfault. The boy revealed he was actually a merchant from the Republic of Amoris, who had been captured and turned into a slave translator. He confirmed that the Vader Dragon Kingdom was a massive, aggressive power that had recently started expanding across the seas. This news made it clear to Heel that these visitors weren't just passing through, they were a major threat to the island's peace. Heel watched a new boat approach the pier. It carried people who appeared sick or injured, but they had no weapons or magic. Despite their harmless appearance, Heel noticed they had strange, wing-like ears, a sign of dragon blood. Ardor, the enemy leader, came ashore unarmed and smiling, asking if his tired crew could stay for one night. Yerevan was against it, but Heel agreed, secretly planning a welcome for them. Heel knew Ardor was plotting something, so he held a strategy meeting with Rihanna, the mages, and the golems. He ordered them to surround the visitors and prepare for a fight. Within an hour, nearly 1,000 of Ardor's men had landed. They were eerily quiet and orderly. Suddenly, Ardor laughed and his body began to glow. He transformed into a pale blue dragon, roaring at the sky. The rest of his crew also transformed into smaller dragons called Lindworm. Ardor bragged about his true form, thinking Heel would be terrified. But Heel had seen much bigger monsters like the Leviathan and wasn't impressed. When Ardor threatened to eat the islanders, Heel gave the signal. Rihanna, Baris, and Fjord launched fire magic, precisely burning the dragon's wings. Ardor tried to blast Heel with lightning, but a shield golem blocked it. Heel then used a wind spell to blow Ardor into the sea. The other monsters joined the fight. Yerevan and Ashton attacked with weapons, while Terran trapped the dragons in webs. Mappa even used his hammer to knock them out. Heel had instructed everyone not to kill. Following Bari's research, they focused on the wings, which were the source of the Dragonkin's power. Once their wings were burned, the enemies reverted to human form, groaning in pain. Ardor tried to flee toward his ships, but a giant golem grabbed him by the neck. The 3 enemy ships were towed back to the pier, and the remaining guards surrendered immediately. With the threat over, Heel checked on the slaves who had been held on the ships. They were tattered and covered in wounds, but Rihanna began treating them. Among them was Belfault the merchant. To thank Heel, Belfault offered a high-value insurance document worth 300,000 dells. Heel realized this was a fortune to most, though his own island was richer in gems. Heel told Belfault to keep the money and offered him a job: take the captured dragon people back to their kingdom along with a letter. Heel refused to keep them as slaves or islanders because of their aggressive nature. Belfault agreed to the task, relieved that Heel was against slavery. However, when Belfault asked which country Heel represented to officially declare them prisoners of war, Heel hesitated, knowing that claiming the kingdom of San Juarez would only cause more trouble. Heel officially declared the island an independent nation named Sheol to avoid trouble with his father, the king of San Juarez. He held a meeting with everyone under the World Tree to plan their future. They decided to hide their massive wealth, like the life-extending stones and magic crystals, to avoid attracting invaders. Baris proposed a smart urban plan, a commercial district near the pier for outsiders and a walled-off residential area for the islanders. He also suggested building a palace for Heel to show authority. While Heel felt awkward about being called a king, the others insisted he was their leader. They eventually agreed to keep the throne vacant for now, functioning more like a republic. To keep the caves secret, they planned to build temple-like structures over the entrances, making them off-limits to visitors. Heel gave Belfault a diplomatic letter for the Dragon Kingdom, explaining that they acted in self-defense and wanted peace. Since Belfault had lost his ship and goods, Heel lent him a ship and hired him as a trader, paying him handsomely in high-quality gold coins. As Belfault sailed away, he noticed the letter was addressed from the Sheol Empire. Misunderstanding the title, he left believing Heel was a powerful emperor. With the guests gone, construction began. Heel used his workshop ability to instantly turn raw ore from his inventory into perfectly shaped stone blocks for the city walls. While the monsters handled the mortar, Heel realized his workshop could learn to make it too. By touching a sample of the mortar Mappa had created, Heel unlocked the ability to produce cement, mortar, and concrete directly from his inventory. This new power meant they could now build their new city much faster and stronger than before. Heel realized that while he could now produce mortar directly from his inventory, he still needed water to mix it. Since water isn't a mined material, he couldn't store it in his inventory. To solve this, he collected the pre-mixed mortar Mappa had prepared and stored that instead. Pointing his hand at the construction site, Heel released the mortar like a high-pressure hose, quickly coating the stone. He realized this sticky, fast-hardening liquid could also be a great weapon to blind or trap giant enemies. With this method, the team built massive castle walls, 5 times Heel's height, in just a few minutes. As Mappa climbed the fresh wall to inspect it, a giant human-sized bee appeared behind him. Heel shouted a warning, but Mappa, confused, simply turned around and offered his backside to the creature. The bee promptly stung Mappa's butt, sending him falling off the wall in a daze. Seal caught him while Heel used healing magic. Highness tried to shoot the bee with arrows, but it was too fast until Terran, the giant spider, caught it in a massive web. Upon closer look, the bee, which they named Heath, wasn't actually aggressive. It seemed weak with tattered wings and a strangely swollen belly. Heel decided to trust his gut and healed the creature. To everyone's surprise, Heath thanked Heel by spitting a thick yellow liquid onto his face. It wasn't an attack. It was incredibly delicious honey made from the world tree's nectar. Heel realized Heath was a monster that could be tamed, and after officially naming it, a flash of light confirmed the bond. Heel and Rihanna helped Heath set up a home at the top of the world tree. They built a house-sized wooden hive with hexagonal holes where Heath immediately began laying eggs. It turned out she was pregnant and looking for a safe place to nest. With a colony of giant bees now living on the island, Heel looked forward to a steady supply of high-quality honey and wax for candle. Leaving the construction to the monsters, Heel returned to the mines with Fjord and Terran to continue the search for the island's control unit. While digging, Terran and Fjord sensed something moving behind a wall. They heard the distinct clang of a tool hitting rock. Heel dug through and discovered a hidden chamber filled with slow-moving gray slimes. Unlike the blue, bouncy seal, these slimes were firm and dull. One particular gray slime stood out because it was using a stylish ice axe to mine the walls, though it was only breaking off tiny pebbles. When Heel used his superior strength to easily smash the wall for the slime, they discovered a pile of ancient skeletons. The skulls were unusually large, matching the one Heel had found when he first arrived on the island. These were the remains of dwarves. When Mappa walked into the room, the gray slimes reacted with intense emotion. Some trembled in fear, while others seemed to recognize him. It became clear that these slimes were the spirits of dwarves who had lost their bodies long ago, and they were likely Mappa's original kin. The discovery of their ancestors' bones left the mining slime stunned, confirming that the history of this island was much deeper than Heel had imagined. The gray slimes were actually the spirits of dwarves who had transferred their souls into slime bodies to survive a meteorite strike ages ago. However, seeing their own ancient skeletal remains left them deeply depressed and unresponsive. To Heel's shock, he also learned that Mappa, despite his muscular build and beard, was technically only 7 years old. While the gray slimes were wallowing in sadness, Mappa took action. He dumped a pile of blacksmithing hammers in front of them and went to his forge. He crafted a magnificent golden axe with ancient patterns and held it high. Suddenly, a massive bolt of lightning struck Mappa, turning his hair gold and surrounding his body with electricity. Seal translated that this was the axe of the tyrannical king, a royal weapon only a dwarf prince or king could create. Realizing Mappa was royalty, the gray slimes were filled with respect and immediately regained their spirit, joining the forge to help the island's monsters with professional blacksmithing. Heel returned to the mines with Fjord and Terran to find the island's control unit. As they dug deeper, the rock became incredibly hard, and they began unearthing meteoritic iron, a rare mineral from the heavens. Seal became worried that the meteorite that wiped out the dwarves might have also destroyed the control unit, but they pushed forward until a warning bell rang. Camus, the winged merchant, was returning to the island, but he wasn't alone. A kraken, a legendary sea monster with massive tentacles, was chasing Camus's ship. The giant Mappa golem standing in the harbor fired a blast of flames from its mouth, hitting the monster. However, the kraken survived and retaliated by wrapping its tentacles around the golem. In a bizarre turn, the golem, having spent too much time watching the real Mappa, began making embarrassing, blissful moaning sounds as the tentacles squeezed it, leaving the onlookers disgusted. The kraken proved to be a tough opponent. Its thick mucus protected it from Barry's lightning and the other monsters' attacks. Seeing the Mappa golem in trouble, Heel needed to get closer to the fight. Heath, the giant bee, flew down and dropped a rope for Heel. Grabbing onto the rope like a swing, Heel overcame his fear of heights as Heath zoomed toward the ocean so Heel could deliver a finishing blow to the sea monster. As the lightning strike hit the water, the kraken finally trembled and sank, defeated. The Mappa golem triumphantly hauled the massive corpse onto the shore, and the island erupted in cheers for the beast's downfall and Camus's safe return. Heath, the giant bee, lowered Heel to the ground and gave him a kiss that left his face covered in sweet nectar. Camus, now a beautiful blonde woman due to the magic stone's power, rushed to hug Heel but was intercepted by Heath. After some chaotic honey-smeared confusion and a sneaky kiss for Heel, Camus officially settled back into life on Sheol. The kraken's body was so massive it looked like a mountain, requiring Heel to expand the cave freezers once again. Camus had been busy. The ship was packed with seeds for wheat, barley, and fruits from across the continent. She also brought livestock like cows and chickens, though pigs were skipped since orcs consider them sacred. Hundreds of books were unloaded, mostly basic magic and stories, as technical books were rare among orcs, but enough to start the school Barris wanted. Most importantly, Camus brought 200 new residents, including goblins and kobolds who had been freed from ransom and wanted a new life on the island. Among the items Camus brought was a fashion magazine from the royal capital. While Rihanna and Camus giggled over the risque trends, Heel noticed a shocking headline. The Duke of Barleon had been arrested by the King of San Juarez. The Duke's daughter, Princess Layla, Heel's former fiancée, was missing. Though worried, Heel knew Layla was strong and likely had her own plan. He realized the king now had total control over the nearby principality, meaning it was only a matter of time before royal ships arrived at Sheol. That night, a massive feast was held under the world tree. The monsters feasted on roasted kraken and continental whiskey. Yerevan got the kobold Ashton so drunk that Ashton reverted to a puppy-like state, barking and licking everyone. Amidst the music and laughter, Camus warned Heel that while they could likely defeat the Royal Navy, the king could send over 1,000 ships. To avoid a bloodbath, they agreed to strengthen their own navy as a deterrent while remaining open to paying taxes for autonomy. Camus even suggested building a goddess golem, modeled after her beautiful new form to replace the embarrassing Mappa statue. The next morning, the island was buzzing with new projects. Barris began organizing the school, the new residents started expanding the reclaimed land for farming, and workshops were set up to make clothes based on the new books. Heel, accompanied by Seal the Slime, headed back into the deepest part of the cave. With the Cave King Power and his team ready, they were finally prepared to break through the final wall and reach the ancient Imperial control unit. Heel and his group entered the massive hemispherical central chamber. At the center stood a glowing white altar covered in stones that looked like buttons. Seal jumped onto the altar and pressed a stone, causing the walls to light up with lifelike projections. These images showed thousands of naked humans of all ages floating in water, the original bodies of the souls now living inside the slime. Seeing that many of the tanks remained dark, Seal realized many of his people hadn't survived the long sleep, leaving him visibly dejected. Seal tried to use the stones to control the island's golems, but the device wouldn't respond. Suddenly, a cold voice echoed through the room as two red lights appeared in a dark tunnel. A self-proclaimed great strategist named Ares introduced himself with an arrogant laugh, claiming to be a god of war. While Ares tried to act intimidating, Heel noticed the voice sounded shaky and desperate. Ares summoned a squad of mithril-armored golems to surround the group, but they wouldn't move. Heel realized Ares was watching them through a hidden camera and was actually terrified. Following Mappa's lead, Heel threatened to break open a panel under the control unit. Ares panicked and begged them to stop, eventually admitting he just wanted to feel the thrill of winning a battle once in his life. Heel played along, admitting defeat, which caused Ares to cheer in celebration. With the act over, the panel opened, and Ares revealed his true form, a plump reddish-brown octopus with a human-like head. He held a yellow translation stone that allowed him to speak their language. Seal explained that Ares was actually an alien princess who had landed on the planet as a baby inside a meteorite and was raised in an aquarium by Seal's people. Having spent her life reading war chronicles, she developed her eccentric personality. Feeling a sense of kinship with the lonely octopus, Heel invited Ares to join them on the surface. Ares dramatically pledged her loyalty, convinced she had been hired as the island's official strategist. Heel tried to give a translation stone to Mappa, hoping to finally hear him speak, but the silent worker simply tried to eat it before spitting it out, remaining as mysterious as ever. The lighthearted moment was cut short as Seal detected a massive threat. A giant chimera, far larger than any recorded in history, emerged from the darkness. Ares warned that the beast was a mindless predator from an abandoned underground city that even ate its own kind. Seal took control of the mithril golems and ordered them to attack, but the chimera was too powerful. With a single sweep of its snake-headed tail, it shattered the golems, sending their armored remains flying toward Heel and his friends like cannonball. Ares curled into a ball in terror as the massive beast prepared to charge. Ares was protected by the shield, but the golems were quickly being destroyed by the chimera. Ares suggested a plan. Heel should throw her at the lion's head so she could immobilize it while the others attacked. Despite Heel's concern about her being eaten, Ares insisted she would be fine. Mappa grabbed Ares by the leg and spun her around like a hammer throw, launching her through the air. She landed on the chimera's forehead, but before she could act, a snake head from the beast's back swallowed her whole. The chimera began thrashing wildly, likely due to Ares releasing ink inside its body. Suddenly, the monster went quiet and sat down like a loyal dog. A notification appeared, informing Heel that the chimera was now eligible to be tamed. Mappa began playing with the massive beast using a piece of his grass skirt, and the chimera responded playfully like a cat. Seizing the chance, Heel tamed the creature and named it Mike. On Heel's command, Mike's snakehead spat out Ares, who was covered in slime but alive. Ares claimed her secret poison had forced the beast to surrender, insisting being swallowed was part of her plan. Heel officially tamed Ares as well, welcoming both her and Mike to the team. Afterward, they collected the remains of the defeated mithril golems, gaining 50 magic cores and high-quality armor to bolster the island's defenses. Seal revealed that the central device was too damaged to restore the souls of her people to their original bodies yet. She felt responsible and wanted to head deeper into the dangerous underground alone to find repair parts, but Heel and the others refused to let her go solo, promising to help her when they were better prepared. Before leaving the chamber, Seal presented Heel with the imperial crown of her fallen empire. It was a beautiful crystal artifact capable of boosting magical power. She also gave him a royal staff, treasures made of mithril, and a rare liquid metal that could change its color and shape at will. As they returned to the surface, a bell rang out, signaling a new arrival at sea. A small, agile trading ship was approaching without a flag, but it eventually waved a white flag to show it wasn't hostile. Camus and Barris went to inspect the vessel and returned with a guest. A woman in a wide-brimmed hat stepped onto the pier and revealed herself to be Layla, the silver-haired princess of Barleon and Heel's former fiancé. She explained that she had fled her home following her father's arrest and had come to find Heel on his island. Layla explained that she had always dreamed of reviving the Barleon Empire's golden age, where all races lived together in peace. She revealed that she had sent the previous scout ship out of curiosity, but after hearing about the giant world tree and the thriving community of monsters and humans, she had to see it for herself. While she teased Heel that she only came because things are easier when he's around, her presence brought a major revelation. Layla presented Heel with a sacred crown and scepter from the old empire, intending to give his rule legitimacy. Heel was shocked, insisting he had no desire to be an emperor, but Barris corrected him. The islanders had already decided to call their new nation the Sheol Empire. Since the leaders of the various tribes already functioned as kings and queens, they felt it was only right for Heel to hold a title above them. Furthermore, a letter had already been sent to the neighboring Republic of Amoris officially identifying him as Emperor Heel. Realizing there was no turning back, Heel accepted his new role. He decided that while he would hold the title of Emperor, the Sheol Empire would function as a republic where everyone was equal. However, this move made conflict with his father, the King of San Juarez, inevitable. News of Heel's survival and his rebellion soon reached the royal palace. While the nobles and princes were outraged that Heel was living with monsters and claiming a throne, the king simply smiled, seemingly amused by the turn of events. Back on the island, Heel gathered his advisors under the World Tree to prepare for the kingdom's arrival. The monster leaders, Yerevan, Ashton, and Highness, were ready to fight, but Heel hoped for a peaceful resolution. Fjord suggested hiding the monsters in the caves and pretending only humans lived there, but Layla stepped in and challenged their passive attitude. She argued that they should proudly show the world what they had built instead of hiding in fear. Inspired by Layla's strength, Heel made a final decision. He would no longer run. He declared that Sheol was now a sovereign nation and he would protect its people at any cost. If the kingdom refused to recognize their independence, he was prepared to fight. The group began assessing their military strength. With a disciplined ground force, a navy equipped with underwater golems, and the massive Mappa golem, they were confident they could repel an invasion. Ares, the eccentric octopus strategist, joined the discussion, suggesting they use their military advantage to secure better terms during negotiation. While some suggested bribing the kingdom's inspectors with gold, Heel warned that showing off too much wealth would only make the island a target for greedy nations. The council remained divided on how to handle the human visitors, with some even suggesting using Ares' poison to force the kingdom's officials into submission. Ares suggested using her special poison to control the kingdom's negotiators, but Barris and Rihanna disagreed, arguing that the kingdom would simply send someone else if their interests weren't met. Heel decided to keep the poison as a desperate last resort to avoid bloodshed. Layla then pointed out that the kingdom's deep hatred for monsters means they won't be swayed by money or logic. They will likely attack on sight. To counter this, she proposed a psychological strategy, making it look like a large human population lives on the island alongside the monsters. Since recruiting real human immigrants would take too long, Layla suggested building human-style houses and using her crew members to create the appearance of a human settlement. Heel realized he could improve this plan using the Ryukin liquid metal Seal gave him. By applying this metal to the mithril golems, he could create lifelike human doubles. Seal agreed to let him use the metal, and Heel planned to head back underground to gather more and repair the island's control unit. Meanwhile, Layla's crew was shocked to see Mappa at work. Despite being a naked, dancing dwarf, his blacksmithing skills were inhumanly fast and precise. Layla, always calm and serious, observed the island's progress with Heel. She mentioned that her prophet Crest had once predicted Heel would become a king, a prophecy that was technically coming true, though in a way no one expected. Heel officially appointed Layla as the island's diplomat, trusting her high society experience and calm demeanor to handle negotiations with other nations. The island began a massive push to increase its human presence. Camus and Layla set sail for the Republic of Amoris to recruit anti-kingdom exiles and build diplomatic ties. Layla used Sheol's gold and jewels to prepare gifts for influential nobles, knowing that merchants and politicians are easily swayed by wealth. Before leaving, Layla and Camus surprisingly told Heel to prepare for a wedding ceremony upon their return. Heel, slightly confused, assumed they meant a large celebration for the crew and agreed to get everything ready. Back on the surface, Heel tested the liquid metal on Mithril Golem number 15. The transformation was perfect. The golem could now mimic anyone's appearance, including skin texture and clothing. After seeing the golem successfully copy both him and Yerevan, Heel felt confident they could populate the island with convincing human decoys. Rihanna apologized for the political pressure of the Emperor title, but Heel reassured her that his bond with the islanders remains the same. With the surface preparations in motion, Heel headed back into the caves to secure more resources and continue the island's development. Heel entered the underground caves with Terran the Spider, Fjord, Seal the Slime, and Golem number 15. Ares, the octopus strategist, rode along on the golem's head to guide them. As they traveled deeper, they reached an opening that revealed a massive underground city. The scale was breathtaking, with stone mansions, tall spires, and mountain-like domes that made Heel's former royal capital look tiny by comparison. Despite being underground, the space felt as vast as the outside world. The group heard the distant howls of chimeras fighting over territory. Ares warned that these creatures were aggressive and traveled in packs, recalling a time she had to hide in a salt jar for a year just to survive them. As they explored, Heel noticed the city was strangely clean, with no dust or plants. He spotted small slimes moving along the walls, realizing they acted as an automatic cleaning crew for the ancient civilization. Suddenly, Heel sensed a powerful magical presence. A group of 5 chimeras had tracked their scent and was closing in from both sides. Before Heel could use his magic, the sky above turned red. Thousands of cave spiders, similar to Terran but slightly smaller and blue, began descending from the ceiling on silk threads. Terran quickly communicated with them, and the spiders launched a coordinated attack, dropping massive silk nets that entangled the chimeras. With the predators trapped, Ares used her remaining poison to knock them out. Terran introduced Heel to the spider colony, and Heel thanked them for their help. The spiders indicated they wanted to move to the surface, and Heel agreed to welcome them to his nation. He then officially tamed the 5 paralyzed chimeras and ordered them to guard the cave entrance. The group reached a massive warehouse where the liquid metal Ryukin was stored. The room glowed bright gold from the sheer volume of the material. Suddenly, the door burst open as Mappa, the silent worker, came charging in completely naked. He was being chased by a frenzied horde of chimeras that had bypassed the spiders. Mappa slipped on the slick floor and crashed headfirst into a glass container, shattering it and becoming completely covered in the golden liquid metal. As Heel rushed to help, the Ryukin began to react to Mappa's body. Instead of washing off, the metal fused and expanded, transforming Mappa into a giant, muscular version of himself, twice the height of a human. Mappa flexed his new golden muscles and even made a small, baby-like sound, though he remained mostly silent. He used the metal to shift his appearance, turning his grass skirt into tight-fitting underwear, which only made Fjord and Ares more embarrassed. With the warehouse surrounded by chimeras, Ares proposed a plan to use Mappa's new form. Mappa manipulated the liquid metal to grow even larger, reaching the size of a massive golem. Seal opened the warehouse doors and Mappa stepped out, letting out an eerie laugh. The sight of the giant, golden Mappa was so terrifying that the chimeras scattered in fear. Even the brave cave spiders were startled by his transformation. With the path cleared by Mappa's intimidating new body, the group prepared to transport the resources back to the surface. Heel and the group left the underground city on Mappa's back, who had used the liquid metal to transform into a giant golden snake. Despite the dizzying speed and Mappa's bizarre naked head sticking out of the snake's front, they safely reached the surface. The island was already bustling with activity as a blue-colored colony of cave spiders followed them out to settle on the surface. Heel began using the newly acquired liquid metal and magic stones to create human-like golem. However, Mappa's chaotic nature took over. He used the metal to turn into a muscular giant to taunt Yerevan, and then transformed into a naked woman to tease him further. This resulted in Heel accidentally creating a female golem. To his surprise, these new golems possessed a sense of self and even felt embarrassment at being naked. Heel quickly ordered them to mimic the clothing of those around them. These golems could speak and follow complex orders, making them perfect for the island's defense. Among the new creations, Golem number 15 stood out. Transformed into a dignified, handsome, middle-aged man in noble attire, he looked so much like a king that the monster girls were instantly charmed. Heel realized number 15 could easily act as a public figurehead for the Empire. Meanwhile, the other islanders began playing with the leftover liquid metal. Fjord mimicked her father's muscles, and Ashton tried and failed to impress Lil by turning into a female kobold. In a quiet moment, Rihanna used the metal to temporarily return to her original, smaller goblin form. Looking up at Heel, she reminisced about their first meeting. The nostalgia and the bond they shared finally pushed Heel to overcome his hesitation. He confessed his love to Rihanna, promising that he would always care for her. Rihanna, moved to tears, reciprocated his feeling. Heel vowed to himself that he would eventually surprise her with a ring and a proper wedding. Far out at sea, a San Juarez naval fleet was approaching. On board were two of Heel's brothers, the 18th Prince Orin and the 11th Prince Valpas. Orin, a sage and powerful wizard, was a cruel sociopath who enjoyed killing small animals and viewed Heel as a toy to be broken. Valpas, known publicly as a simple tax official with a divine calculation crest, was secretly the kingdom's top assassin and spy. While Valpas wanted to finish the mission quietly, he was wary of Orin's unstable and violent nature. They were only a day away from reaching the island. Before dawn the next morning, Lil woke Heel and led him to the incubation hut. The dragon eggs they had purchased were finally hatching. A small red fire dragon was the first to break through its shell. Though it looked strong, the newborn creature was trembling with fear until Rihanna gently picked it up and comforted it against her chest. As the other 30 wyvern eggs began to crack, the island prepared to welcome its newest, most powerful residents. Lil and Mel, the kobold and baby bird, suddenly began to glow with intense magical energy. To everyone's surprise, they used transformation magic they had learned from an ancient book to turn into small red dragons, mimicking the newborn fire dragon Fowl. They used these forms to comfort the baby dragon, who quickly felt safe enough to fall asleep. Rihanna and Heel were amazed by their progress, but the surprises didn't stop there. Lil and Mel closed their eyes again and transformed into human children. Lil appeared as a young girl with short white hair and dog ears, while Mel became a girl with long silver hair and white wings. Although they were disappointed that their fluffy tails still popped out, they were excited to call Heel Dad and help Rihanna, whom they called Mom, look after the nursery. Heel officially tamed the newborn dragon, naming him Fowl, and realized the island's family was growing faster than he could keep up with. By that afternoon, Fowl was already growing at an incredible rate, swallowing fish whole and even taking his first flight. Seeing the dragons and wyverns in good hands with the transformed Lil and Mel, Heel returned to the deep mines. He met up with Terran, Fjord, Ares, and Mappa to continue the mission to repair the island's central control unit. As they moved through the underground city, the group was haunted by a creepy, low groaning sound that echoed through the tunnels. The cave spiders were hiding in fear, and even the aggressive chimeras seemed to have vanished. Suddenly, a massive creature lunged at them from the darkness with terrifying speed. It had the body of a lion, but the face of a bald, bearded old man with a sad expression. Ares identified it as a manticore, a beast far more dangerous and intelligent than a chimera, known for firing poisonous needles from its tail. The manticore launched a rain of magical stingers, but Heel's shield held firm. Confused by the transparent barrier, the beast charged headfirst into the shield and knocked itself out, landing on its back and crying in pain. While the others were wary, Mappa felt a strange connection to the naked old man creature. He stepped forward, comforted the crying manticore, and fed it dried fish. The beast immediately calmed down, allowing Heel to tame it. Named Kappa, the manticore became Mappa's new mount, and its presence served as a perfect deterrent to keep other monsters away while they worked. Guided by Seal, the team finally reached the main control unit, a massive cone-shaped building. Inside, they found the remains of several mithril golems that had been shattered into pieces. Seal was saddened to see the control pipes were also heavily damaged, but Mappa inspected the machinery and confirmed he could fix it using the scattered mithril and Heel's fire magic. Just as they began the repairs, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hall. A figure in golden armor appeared at the entrance. Unlike the previous golem Seal had befriended, this one was hostile. Without warning, it raised its hand and unleashed a blast of intense flames at the group. Seal was shocked, as she no longer had control over the guardians in this sector. This golden golem was different, stronger, and clearly acting on its own orders. Heel engaged the golden golem, noticing its magical energy was concentrated in 5 spots where magic stones were embedded. Fjord reinforced Heel's magical shield, allowing Heel to unleash a fire attack that overpowered the golem's flames. However, the golem used its own shield and magic-resistant body to block the hit. Kappa, the newly tamed manticore, suddenly roared and lunged at the machine. Terran provided cover by shooting spider webs, and when the golem tried to cut through them, Kappa landed a high-speed punch that slammed the guardian against the wall. Before it could recover, Heel swung his pickaxe and sent the golem straight into his inventory. Heel examined the loot and found orichalcum and magic-absorbing crystals, but instead of the usual false heartstone used to power golems, he found a heartstone. According to his records, this was a broken version of a core that allowed golems to act with their own will. Mappa quickly repaired the damaged pipes in the control room, and Heel installed magic stones with shield spells to protect the area from future attacks. With the repairs finished, Seal operated the main control unit. Walls opened to reveal tanks filled with people who had been merged with slimes. As the water drained, the people woke up in their original human bodies, overjoyed to be back to normal. Seal decided to stay in slime form for now to help the humans regain their memories and adjust to their new lives. Heel returned to the surface and met with Liena and Barris at the World Tree. They discussed expanding the farms to feed the growing population. Heel then used his crafting skills to give the Heartstone a new body, using a goldfish-shaped doll as a base. The doll, named Borshin, spoke with the memories of an ancient imperial citizen. Borshin explained that the golems had attacked to protect humanity from the king of the underworld, a terrifying fire-breathing entity living in an underground lake who hated humans. The golems feared that activating the control device would provoke him. To avoid a disaster, Seal temporarily shut down the machinery. Heel decided to meet this king of the underworld to clear up the misunderstanding. He traveled deep into the Blackrock Caves with Borshin, Seal, and Number 15. They reached a mystical area where sunlight hit a vast underground grassland and a beautiful lake. A low voice echoed through the air, the king of the underworld. Heel apologized for taking the magma, but the king seemed bored rather than angry. He revealed that he had been sealed underground for tens of thousands of years. The king then manifested a dragon made of pure fire and challenged Heel to a fight to the death just to cure his boredom. Heel refused, offering to help the king escape instead. The king of the underworld sadly explained that his true body was trapped behind a massive rock face that could not be broken from the inside. Heel walked toward the back wall of the cave, guided by his cave king instincts. Elto, the king of the underworld, mocked him, claiming the wall was an indestructible seal that even his flames couldn't scratch for thousands of years. Ignoring the taunts, Heel swung his ice pickaxe. With one hit, the wall shattered. On the other side, they found a massive red dragon standing before a sea of boiling lava. This was Elto's true body. Elto was shocked that a simple stick could break a seal that had held him for ages. Heel checked his inventory and realized the wall was made of sealing stones, which, according to his records, only the Cave King could break. When Elto saw the crest on Heel's hand, he panicked, thinking Heel had come to kill him for stealing the king title. Heel calmed him down, explaining he just wanted to help. Elto's attitude flipped instantly. Realizing Heel was the new Cave King, he tried to act tough again, but Heel simply used the sealing stones from his inventory to instantly rebuild the wall, trapping Elto once more. Terrified of being left alone in the dark, Elto burst into tears and begged for mercy. He offered to become Heel's loyal servant. A system message appeared, confirming that Elto could be tamed. Heel accepted, and the legendary Demon King of the Inferno officially joined the group. As they talked, Elto explained that the original Cave King was a feared ruler of the underworld who had given the sealing stones to a hero long ago. Elto also revealed that his homeland was the Elt continent. Heel remembered Loidon, the Earth Dragon merchant, mentioning that place. Sadly, Heel had to tell Elto that his home was now a wasteland ruined by constant wars between dragon tribes. Heartbroken, Elto begged Heel to take him back so he could stop the fighting. Heel agreed but told him to wait until Loidon returned so they could make a proper plan. To pass the time, Elto offered to teach the group fire magic. Back at the surface, he introduced himself to the village leaders. While he looked like a small dragon, he took on a human form, a tanned woman with long red hair to be more approachable. To show off his power, Elto fired a hell explosion at the empty sea. The attack looked like a tiny red dot at first, but once it hit the horizon, it triggered a massive explosion that shook the entire island and sent a giant tidal wave toward the shore. Heel had to deploy a magical shield to protect everyone from the fallout. Unbeknownst to them, a royal battleship was nearby. Prince Valpas and the mage Orin were on board, heading toward the island. The shockwave from Elto's attack nearly flipped their ship, snapping the masts and tearing the sails. While Orin tried to dismiss it as an underwater volcano, Valpas felt a deep sense of dread. It looked like a deliberate warning to stay away. With the ship badly damaged and taking on water, the royal fleet was now struggling just to stay afloat, their mission to the island halted by a single display of the dragon's power. The royal battleship was in ruins after the accidental shockwaves from Elto's magic. With 3 masts snapped and the hull leaking from multiple holes, Prince Valpas was forced to help the crew with manual repairs. His younger brother, Orin, suggested that their desperate situation was actually a perfect cover. They could now enter the island by pretending to be shipwreck survivors, knowing Heel's kind nature wouldn't allow him to turn away people in need. On the island, Elto began teaching fire magic to the residents. He explained that magic is more about the mental image than just the words. Heel decided to try the Hell Explosion spell, but aimed it high into the sky to be safe. To everyone's shock, the spell didn't just explode. It turned the sky pitch black with a massive wave of dark energy. Elto warned Heel that his power was so high that he could accidentally destroy the planet if he wasn't careful. Barris, the Magic King, tried the same spell, and though his version was smaller, it also dyed the sky black. To lighten the mood, Elto showed them fire bombs, a variation of the spell used for celebrations. He launched sparks into the air that burst into colorful fireworks. The villagers were delighted and joined in, creating a small fireworks display. Meanwhile, Fowl the baby dragon took a liking to Elto, sensing a connection to her homeland. Elto looked at the hatchling with a mix of sadness and affection, knowing the struggles the dragon tribes faced back on the Elt continent. As the training continued, Elto sensed a strange magical presence approaching from the sea. Heel used a telescope made of leviathan scales and saw the royal ship limping toward the pier. He immediately ordered the island to go into a defensive state. Non-combatants headed to the caves while the warriors gathered at the docks. Heel noticed the ship was in total tatters and wondered if they had been attacked by pirates or monsters, not realizing his own group's practice magic had caused the damage. On the approaching ship, Valpas was stunned by what he saw through his own telescope. In just 3 months, the barren reef had been transformed into a fortified city with a giant tree that looked centuries old. He realized the initial reports about Heel being sent to a wasteland were completely wrong. Seeing the island's heavy defenses, Valpas knew a direct attack was impossible and decided to stick to the plan of acting like helpless victim. However, Oren's mental state began to fracture. He was humiliated by the overwhelming magic he had witnessed from the island, feeling a level of fear he had never known. In a fit of madness, Oren began attacking his own crew members with wind magic, cutting off their limbs and wounding them severely. When a horrified Valpas tried to stop him, Oren claimed that these sacrifices were necessary to make their story of a brutal shipwreck look more believable to Heel. Valpas realized his brother had become a dangerous liability, but before he could act, Heel's boat approached to investigate the bloody scene on the deck. Valpas and Oren realized their ship was doomed and decided to stick to their plan of playing the victim. As Heel's boat approached, Valpas ordered his crew to treat the injured, while Oren watched Heel with a creepy grin, fascinated by the number of allies Heel had gathered. Heel arrived at the battleship accompanied by Ares and Fure. To avoid looking like a threat, Heel suppressed his magic and carried no weapons. He brought along a mix of humans and monsters like goblins and orcs to show the diversity of his island. Seeing the wreckage, Heel noticed the damage looked like it came from magic rather than a typical battle. Valpas immediately jumped onto Heel's boat, acting surprised and relieved to see his brother alive. He claimed pirates had attacked them and that he was on a secret mission for the king involving a lot of money. Heel didn't buy the act and asked to inspect the ship. On deck, the scene was grim, with many sailors missing limbs. Valpas blamed a famous pirate fleet, but Heel knew those pirates had already been defeated and were nowhere near these waters. Heel called out Valpas for lying, pointing out that the pirates he mentioned were actually living peacefully on the island now. Caught in a lie, Valpas tried another story, claiming they were chasing Heel's ex-fiancée, Princess Layla. When Heel revealed that Layla had already visited the island and left, Valpas realized he was failing to deceive his brother. Heel ignored the nonsense and focused on healing the sailors. He was disgusted to find Oren sitting idly by, refusing to use his sage magic to help the dying men. When Heel confronted him, Oren acted arrogant, claiming it wasn't his job to help commoners. Heel stopped hiding his power and glared at Oren with such intense magical pressure that Oren began to sweat in fear, realizing Heel was now far more powerful than him. Terrified, Oren finally started helping with the treatment. The battleship was towed to the island's docks, and the sailors were moved to a secure warehouse. Heel made it clear that while they would repair the ship and provide food, the royal group was restricted to the warehouse area. Valpas tried to laugh it off and even flirted with Liena, but Heel remained firm. To keep Valpas in check, a bearded female golem named Matcha, known for being aggressively affectionate, was assigned as his liaison. Matcha immediately grabbed a terrified Valpas and dragged him toward the warehouse. Heel discussed the situation with Barris, deciding to eventually send Valpas back with a letter for the king, offering a peaceful negotiation. However, knowing Oren was a dangerous wildcard, Heel decided to stay close to the docks and keep a constant watch until the repairs were finished. Barris confirmed that Oren's magical energy was massive, but he and Liena could handle it if things turned ugly. Heel remained cautious, knowing Oren was emotionally unstable and prone to sudden outbursts. While Barris focused on repairing the royal ship to get the visitors off the island as quickly as possible, Heel kept a close watch on the warehouse. High up in a watchtower, Ares reported to Heel. She had used her medicinal expertise to secretly poison the wounded sailors on the battleship just enough to make them talk. She confirmed that Oren and Valpas were the supreme commanders sent by the king to investigate the island. Yerevan, watching from nearby, noted that Oren seemed paralyzed by the island's magic, likely because his sage crest allowed him to see just how outmatched he truly was. Ares added that the crew lived in absolute terror of Oren, who treated them with zero humanity.